All right, sorry about the delays here. This is our third human rights panel discussion. These have been really, really fun to be doing as a series here. I'm the host here at Truth from Earth, Seth Stewart, and today we wanted to dive into some topics having to do with uh, notably human rights violations that are currently happening within the borders of the United States. In many circles, it's kind of a taboo topic. There are also lots of clandestine internet conspiracy rabbit holes that people have gone down, claiming to have special information about this and so on. Sorry if we just got a little bit of feedback there. It's just hooking up to the live stream here. But yeah, we're going to go into this from a principled perspective of just compare things directly to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and really try to understand the issues so that we don't fall for hysteria, so that we don't get scared into giving up our rights and all that stuff, because that's arguably the biggest movement I have seen on the internet and in person in the past many years. And there are good reasons to believe that it's a state-sponsored movement, frankly, in that it is something that our own government wants to fall for, is this hysteria around allegations of human rights violations that unfortunately oftentimes are difficult to verify. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just run around the room and give some introductions. And if you wouldn't mind, if you're joining the panel, if you could turn your camera on if you're comfortable doing that. That does make for a little bit better of an experience. For those who are watching, we are going to have some slides with questions. We're going to go back and forth between the slide with the question and all of us in the room go around, ask a question, answer, and discuss. So that's kind of the format here. But yeah, I guess I'll start again. I'm Seth Stewart. I'm the host on this channel. I just started basically YouTubing because I needed a venue to talk with people about things that really matter. And I found that almost nobody comes onto my Facebook or on Twitter, now X, except to argue with me. And so video is a little bit more of a digestible, findable format. And so that's why I started YouTubing. It's not because I'm like a media personality or super good at presenting or sharing anything. It's just because I'm concerned about these things and I needed a venue. So that's why I'm here. Let's go ahead and go around the room. And Scott, do you want to go ahead and give us a little intro?
Sure. My name's Scott. I knew Stuart back in my days at college around this was I think 2013, and and uh I were Facebook friends, and I commented it on one of his posts, and uh, it was like a political discussion thing, and he invited me on his podcast, and so that's where I am today.
Super, that's great. Well, welcome, Scott. And I saw Matthew joined us. Do you want to give us a little intro? Are you joining
Maybe
our
he's
discussion? Or so sorry, some of these invites were sent out a little bit last minute. I've been
Yeah,
corresponding with a
yeah.
number of people. Go ahead, Matthew.
Hello, hello,
Yeah,
now
we can
can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Yep.
Hi, so I'm a BYU grad, strong member of the church, pretty independent thinker, and in kind of the same thing, I enjoy my connection with thoughtful saints, and so I want to join this. I've been a political activist and enjoy thinking about and formulating national, sorry, international policy for several decades.
Good. Awesome. Well, thanks. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I saw you had expressed interest in joining, so figured I'd send out the invite. This is and just for anybody who's watching, this is a very open format, open discussion. If you want to get on here and you have a piece of your mind that you want to share on some of these issues or talk about, discuss these things, feel free. Please do that. That's it is what we make of it, basically. And Marshall, I saw you are on here. I don't know if this is your first time joining us, so are you interested in joining our panel here? having this conversation?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm big into human rights for sure. Given the alternative of treating people how some of these people in the world are doing, these human rights violations, that's not a world I want to be in, frankly. I don't understand it, how people can act that way with such contempt for other humans. It's amazing to me. But I think all things that are good comes from just treating people with just this respect for what we call human rights. Um, I think everything that's good has come from that. So I think it's worth promoting for sure.
Absolutely, and it's super easy to take for granted too when we've been granted our rights for so much of our lives, and things are easy for us. I think let me just start off with this. There's that poem, of it starts off with, I they came first. They came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for the, I don't know. You can substitute whatever group, and it makes sense. Illegal immigrants, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't an illegal immigrant. And then they came for the, Latter Day Saints, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Latter Day Saint. And they came for the Baptists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Baptist. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up for me. So this is one of the really clear and just earth-shatteringly obvious reasons why I care about human rights is it's actually best in our own best interests to stand up for the rights of others. This is what America was founded on. So the constitutional republic, this is its purpose, is to preserve the rights of the individuals, including and especially minorities, from the tyranny of the majority. There are so many people who say, oh, well, the voice of the people want it, therefore it must be right. And I'm like, that sounds like the bread and circuses, the Colosseum of the Roman Empire, thumbs up, thumbs down, mob justice kind of thing, just doing it for our own entertainment. So, well, thank you. With that intro, we're going to go ahead and without further ado, jump into our battery of questions, which is one of the things that really makes this interesting. If you do have suggestions, recommendations for questions, please do you're welcome to drop some into the chat for the meeting, and we'll try to get to those before we're done. So depending on everyone's time and everything, we can also take requests for questions for future panels. So let me go ahead and just share here. It's taking a second. There we go. Alrighty. I'll just confirm that this is coming through. Alrighty. This one might seem a little bit odd and out of place for a human rights panel discussion, but I'm very concerned about it for the following. Sorry if we got some feedback there. But so yeah, this is one reason why I care about the party system is because the party system. Let's just ask the question. Let's each go around the room, and we're just going to say true or false, right? And then we're each going to go around and just take some reasons in discussion. But like, we'll see why. I think why this has to do with human rights in just a second. So, all right, we're just going to go 3, 2, 1, and I just want everyone to unmute and just say true or false, whatever you think. Ideally, we'd have a system where you could just splat your vote up and have a big tally. I haven't figured out how to do that from Zoom yet. So we're just going to go and say what we think all at once, and then we'll go around and take some input. So 3, 2, 1. Let's all mute.
Oh, this is a question.
It's a question. Sorry. Let me back up. I have to kind of explain it every time, so I'm going to try to streamline this process in the future and maybe get enough momentum.
Yeah, maybe read the question out in case.
Okay, sorry. Question.
Videos,
Yeah, super. So yeah, the question one more time. What we're going to do is we're going to count down to 3, and we're just going to say true or false, each of us all at the same time. Since it's a small enough group, we can kind of do that. So the statement is, the party system is a pyramid scheme. We're just going to say, I think that's true, I think that's false. We're going to explain. We're going to do the same thing with basically each of these questions, and hopefully keep it lively. It's always a very, very fun discussion. So does everyone understand the terms?
Okay, yeah, now I got it.
Questions? Okay. All right. Say aye if we're all in agreement.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
I heard some ayes. All right. So 3, 2, 1. True.
False.
True.
Not enough information in the question to make a decision.
So we nearly all gave a different answer. I'm going to try to do this in round robin fashion. I try not to like taint the audience response too much with my own opinion first. So I typically do like to hear from others before I give my opinion. So it would be ideal if we could just do it in fully random order, but like, Marshall, do you want to go ahead and explain your answer first, and we'll just work up Marshall, then Matthew, then Scott, then me.
Yeah. So I think there's two aspects to the party system that we have to consider. There's the party system as it is, and then there's who's controlling the party system is a whole different topic. But a pyramid scheme is basically anything where there's a few people at the top who benefit from massive recruits at the bottom buying into the system. And often the people at the bottom don't realize how raw of a deal it is for them, that they're going to end up losing. You know, that they're drawn in with the allure of whatever promises are coming from the top, but they never really manifest for the people at the bottom.
Okay.
So yeah, I could leave it at that. Go around the.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, can you just like elaborate just maybe a little bit? Like, give me a 30-second why you
Yeah.
think that's. How would you apply that to the party system?
Yeah. So I feel like there are major players in the party systems who have established themselves so thoroughly in the system that they have their connections with big business, big interests, etc. Um, that they're able to make any promises they need to appeal to the base to get all of these people kind of clamoring for that attention. Um, with the hopes of those promises being fulfilled. But that's what the top kind of thrives on. Um, and so in that sense, I think it's a pyramid scheme on both sides. However, I think it's one institution that runs both. And they're doing a what's that called? One term is the good cop, bad cop strategy, where both cops are trying to get information from someone, and one takes the role of a good cop, the other takes the role of a bad cop. But ultimately, they are both on the same side. And I think people are not aware that the two-party system is run by the same groups at the top, and so you'll never find peace in the system because it's designed to always give room for the other side to find faults. And so there's always going to be this war between the two parties, and the people who benefit are the ones in the middle and on the top.
Very interesting take. Thank you. Matthew, what are your thoughts? Party system of pyramid scheme. Your answer was not enough information. Is that right?
Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Maybe we can go to Scott, and then we can go back to Matthew. Does that work?
Yeah. So I have similar views with what Marshall said. Uh, but I kind of differ in a lot of aspects. I said no because, well, first off, by definition, a pyramid scheme is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and they're not taking money to pay a financial investment to another. But I agree with some of the question sentiment, um, th- and uh, and when there were some points I wanted to address. One of them was that um, I don't I I don't know if it's always this. I don't agree that it's the same person playing same people playing good cop bad cop. Uh, when I was listening to something and it was talking about someone mentioned that as an anecdote that throughout history there's always been the top and the right below the ruling class and the people right below the ruling class, and history is them switching places. And I feel like sometimes, like, there's a lot of wealthy people out there that aren't like, like that aren't like really ruling at all, or like try to do like philanthropy and stuff, and like, but they're totally zoned out from what's going on and what's happening day to day. And so I believe that when that uh, you know, when that people, we as people, like I guess maybe I don't want to give up hope, but I think it's more than that, where we as people can, they can spend all the money they want on political advertisements and convince people to vote for them, because that's what has happened in the past. A lot of money spent on political ads and people vote for them. Uh, but when people um, wake up and like realize that something they're doing is bad, and a lot of people are able to come together, and I guess one of the words sayings I hear is class war, not political, not I forget what the other class war, not political, like, it's the working class versus the ruling class. um, uh, and like once people are able to make it known that, like, hey, like because I see it in other countries where I was reading about Ukraine and how, like, during 2014, during their protests, they would go to work throughout the day and then protest in the evening, but things were obviously worse for them then. Uh, with whatever, or at least I think they, maybe I'm going a little bit too into topics that are taboo, but um, I think that, you know, if people make enough ruckus, the ruling class will have to either change their minds or accept the new ruling class of the people who switch places. And I think they know that or believe that.
All right. Okay, cool. So there's some tension between the different
Mhm.
groups of people. There's some kind of middle, the bourgeoisie is um, versus the proletariat, the working class. That's kind of that's the way
Well,
Marx and Lenin had framed it.
yeah,
Uh,
well, two levels to that. I mean, like two levels where it's like two levels where, like, there's the ruling class and maybe like wealthy class under them that
mhm.
maybe will switch places. And I think we as people, if that's true, then what I ultimately believe is that we as people need to take advantage of what is best for us, what is best for our families, to help them grow up in a good environment, and be able to make it so we could raise our families in good environments. If we feel like the environment we have now isn't a good environment, we should try our best to make it a good environment. I think that's what it all comes down to. Whether or not, um, and like, maybe I'm wrong about what the specifics of what's going on, but yeah.
That sounds great. So there are three layers of this pyramid that sounds like you just constructed, and there's
Mhm.
some pyramid dynamic, some maybe not pyramid. I think you're going to love the financial edition of this human rights panel, by the way. Let's go ahead and go to Matthew if you're ready. I'm going to go ahead and unmute so we can hear your input on this
Yeah,
section.
can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, just fine. There we go.
There are only two parties, there are only two philosophies in the world. One is liberty, agency, and eternal progression. The other is captivity and eternal damnation. I'm hearing a lot of talk about separate groups, and Satan's plan was one of division. The Savior's plan was one of unity. So on earth, this war is continuing, with one party being the party of captivity and control, the other idea being the one of liberty and agency. but I don't think the Republican Democrat parties actually match up with these two ideologies. But as saints, this is how we should look at all politics, in my opinion. And because we live in an imperfect world where the political parties kind of align with these ideals, but not perfectly, and there's so much money in politics, anyone who's interested in making money or manipulating the system in order to enrich himself makes things worse and worse and enhances that division. So I'd like to see all money taken out of politics. And ideally, just have something similar where the candidates can speak in person with the people. That's why I think the caucus idea is such a good idea, because it really allows you to have face-to-face discussion with the candidates. Or do something like, now we're in a position with Elon Musk having Twitter to say, okay, no one can spend any money on the election, but we could have unlimited free speech. So the elections for every race, they could message unlimited on X, but with the provision that it has to be the candidate, him or herself. They couldn't outsource it to other people. And so then we get free speech and interaction. Anyone could listen, anyone could watch the debates on there without a lot of advertisement on the way, and anyone could have a global reach. The smallest candidate could have a global reach.
That sounds pretty good to me, honestly. It sounds like
that would really cut out all the advertising firms and political activists and consultants that really mire in the dark money that's out there.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds maybe like take out the middle layer of the money influencing the politics.
Mm-hmm.
Make
it a non-issue.
Yeah, that would be great. I do have issues with X because it is actually bankrolled ultimately by taxpayers. So the claim that it's a free speech platform, it's actually very much a government propaganda platform.
Wait, it's being controlled by whom?
So Elon Musk, the way he got his billions of dollars. We could dive deeper into this on the financial human rights issue, because finances do affect human rights as well. But part of my issue, just in a very, very brief nutshell, if you research how Elon Musk got his billions, it was through subsidies, it was through government contracts and so on. And so like there's this public-private partnership, and where that's the case, like literally some of your taxpayer dollars probably went into the purchase of Twitter. And so, and the government doesn't fund anything that it doesn't intend to control. So anyways, I don't believe it to be an organic free speech platform, if I can put it that way.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And that should be investigated, but
it should be.
Web hosting is so cheap that anyone could do it, even if only each candidate had a website. And it is important to determine, take into account how Musk got his money, but also to look at what he's done with it now that since he's had it, which I think is, for the most part, positive, but not perfect, as no one is.
Yeah, so maybe that's another issue, but like I didn't have any questions on the panel specific to Elon Musk. I guess maybe we'll dive into that in a future topic, and we can examine those questions more thoroughly. But definitely, what we're seeing here, just taking a step back, the parties being a pyramid scheme, we're seeing some dynamics, some interplay between money, power, and the masses, right? And so that's kind of our issue that we need to tackle. My take on the two-party system being a pyramid scheme is that it very much does fit the description of a pyramid scheme. And the problem actually arises for the exact same reason that Elon Musk's financial situation is suspect. It's because the party system is actually a public-private partnership itself, where the government actually gives special powers to political parties that it does not give to the people. So the people are supposed to have representative rights with their government. No matter what government you are a part of, you should have representation in it, for the very reason that your rights should not be trampled upon. You need to have a voice. If somebody steps on you, you need the ability to say ouch and be heard, to the point where the whole body suffers because you suffer, right? And the way that the party system subverts that is they basically, I did a deep dive on Phil Lyman's petition to the United States Supreme Court. Phil Lyman was the Republican Party's nominee in the state of Utah for the governor race this last year, and he won it. He won the Republican convention by a landslide. And then he got bumped off the ballot and he was swapped out for Spencer Cox because the government was able to force a direct primary, which they knew would give a different outcome. And so that's what I refer to as vote laundering. And just to be brief and kind of wrap up this question and move on to the next one, um, it literally is the government stole some of your representative power. It gave it to these political parties, and now you are basically forced to sign up for one of these parties just so you can, just in hopes that you can get some of that political power and representation back. But you still have to. It's a deception. It's a complete illusion. The idea that you'll actually get your political representative power back is just a lie, because they're going to continue to advance candidates who misrepresent you. But you're forced to stomach, because the argument in the Republican Party anyway is that, well, at least Trump isn't Kamala Harris. And so you have to put up with all of Trump's wickedness, his negative attributes and so on, and just be gung-ho for the guy, or else your own party will crucify you and disenfranchise you of your political power. And in that way, it is a pyramid scheme, because you get deplatformed, you get silenced, you get your representative power taken away if you don't toe the party line. So it is really a criminal system. Actually, it fits the exact description of criminal electioneering, what they're doing with the party system, because they are literally advertising the partisan candidates on the general election ballots. Anyways, I'd love to dive more into that, but like, it literally is a power grab. They steal it from you, and then they're like, "Oh, come and participate in our pyramid scheme, so you can get some of this back." And it's just, if we just didn't do illegal and criminal things that are, violate our constitution, then the parties wouldn't actually have that much power. They would still have some power, obviously, because people do subscribe to groupthink and that their endorsement is, but it shouldn't actually matter. And if the government's not advertising those endorsements, then you'd have to actually go look things up for yourself. Anyways, we probably spent a lot of time on this question. Yeah,
Can
go
I say
ahead.
something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I really like Matt thinking of ideas. I think when people come up with ideas, especially when there's a problem in their area of expertise, let's say it's farming and there's a problem with it, and because of a law or some water zoning or something, that may seem boring to you and I, but is someone's way of life, and someone is able to think up ideas and able to go to their political representative and say, hey, this thing you're doing is going to affect me and cause us to not be able to work as well, like not be able to generate as much money, which is bad for your district or something like that. Being able to come up with solutions for them is like, hey, why don't we try this instead, is great. Being able to come up with ideas like Matthew coming up with ideas, great. One caution I have is like with his is like also with the algorithm, how algorithms generate things. It's not one towards one person or one towards another. There's ways people know to manipulate it, especially if they're on the inside, to favor one candidate or favor another. So it ends up being, oh, whoever is able to, owns the algorithm, it's very scary. And
to step out. Thanks for the conversation. This is good.
Oh, thanks, Marshall.
Good hearing you. But yeah, and in addition, something else that Seth brought up was the the two-party system, how it makes you vote for someone who's not perfect. And that just makes me think of European political parties, how they have multiple political parties. And if one doesn't have a majority, then they form a coalition. But the person you're voting for ideally has like the same ideals almost exactly as you, or not almost exactly, but pretty close. where you're not voting for someone because they're not the other, which would also enable people to talk more and more openly about their views and spread ideas. Unfortunately, we have to make do with a two-party system here in the U.S.
Yeah, which is not original to the Constitution, by the way. That's
Yes,
one of the reasons why
yes.
I bring that up.
And I would be also very excited to listen to that Elon Musk panel.
Yeah, it's well, this is part of the reason for doing this is because current events are bringing these issues up. There have been issues before. People keep on telling me. I've had people block me over this and unfriend me and stuff and be like, "What? Where were you when Joe Biden was, all these kids getting trafficked across the border and open borders and stuff?" And I'm like, "Dude, I was speaking up about it then, and you just either people
Mhm.
didn't know me or didn't listen or whatever." I've been vocal
Yeah.
about human rights issues for a long time, and I just had the epiphany, I guess, later last year of just I really do need to go more online, and so it does coincide with Trump's presidency that I've been more online, but I've started, going more in earnest on YouTube and stuff before that. So, but yeah, so it's been a systemic thing. Yeah, let's see. Let's go ahead and transition to the next question. I I kind of feel a little bit goofy, not guilty, but bringing up this whole party thing. It's awkward to have to bring it up, honestly. I don't like the fact that there's this party system we have to wrestle against. It's not really natural, but this is one reason. And maybe this is some advice to myself in the future is maybe just go ahead and have one that's all about human trafficking instead of have one of these events that's all about that one topic instead of weaving in a little bit of the partisan stuff. But the party system, I think everyone can agree, is a large part of the reason why human trafficking is a problem. Because if you go back to Joe Biden's presidency and stuff with the wide open borders, how could we possibly have wide open borders? Well, it's because the Democrats are in control. It's like, doesn't the Constitution prevent a party from taking control? And yes, it did originally until we broke it and violated it and introduced the party system and doubled down on it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have these wild, like, our country is like a, a kid going through puberty with huge mood swings right now. Anyways, it's worse than that. It's violent and despicable. That's why I hate the party system. Um, it really turns people into party animals. That's I've got the little backdrop here just to as an illustration to show like this is kind of the illustration of the party system is that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. It's kind of how I would summarize it. So the next question is related. Maybe it's a little bit of a maybe we can just punt on this one, but this is maybe a word of observation. Just say yay or nay if you agree. I think this is true. I'll just say that outright. I believe that in some sense, in many senses, it is political suicide to go against the party system because you are actually choosing to limit your reach. You're choosing to basically deplatform yourself politically and disenfranchise yourself of your voice and your vote by voting third party, for example, or for advocating for anyone outside of this false dilemma, this Hegelian system. And that's one of the big deceptions that's led to these problems of human rights violations. Because if they can misrepresent you, this is what the party system does inherently, is if you don't align with one of these mainstream parties, then you're an outsider. And guess what? Yeah, it's true that maybe a minority of people are not affiliated with any mainstream party, but they basically have no representation in government. And nobody's thinking about that except maybe some of themselves and maybe a few others who are still along these battle lines that were drawn for us by Uncle Sam, by the parties themselves, really. And they have this monopoly on power. To Marshall's point, it's actually a puppet master game, and they want to keep control over it. So this is why human rights abuses are happening. This is why human trafficking has been happening. Is because we have this inadequate representation system where our representative power has been stolen from us, and we have to participate in these fake systems that are foreign to the Constitution in order to try to claw back some of our representative power. The answer is it doesn't work. It never has worked, and it still doesn't work. Under Donald Trump, we're not getting our rights restored. Instead, we're just going with this tyranny of the majority idea. And that's where I would come from on this one. Scott, you have some thoughts? Would you say yay or nay to the political suicide argument here?
I'm going to say nay, and for a very kind of depressing reason, is because some people, like especially smaller local candidates, are able to, by voting for a third party, you're throwing away your vote. I agree with that. But people running as a third party, sometimes they're paid to be run as a third party to take votes away. In my state, there have been people who run as a third party or get paid to run as a third party by people like by others to uh, to take away votes for a certain candidate and even have their name, they change their name to be exactly like the person they're trying to take away votes from. And uh, like I remember it happening earlier, and I see it happening um, where people get paid to do that. And whether they're paid is over the table or under the table, it's not right that third parties are being used like that here to as a way to spoil votes for another person or to trick people to vote for a person they think they're voting for when they're voting for someone else because there are two names that are exactly the same on a ballot. And and that's why I disagree, and I think it's sad that that has happened. But people do make money from um, like through this fraud by being paid by other people, and it's sad. Um, but voting for a third party candidate is spoiling your vote. You're I think people need to really get their choice down in the primaries. They have to vote for whoever they feel most aligns with them in the political primaries and campaign. And it's a very hard thing to do, especially when there's no one talking about it and you're the only one talking about something that isn't going on and you're trying to do it months in advance, but it's no one's on the ballot yet or something. But I think that's what we have to do.
All right, yeah. So, and we could probably go a deeper dive into voting methods here. I think we can see though, yeah, the spoiler effect sabotages this party system. It enables basically third parties to get squashed and controlled. So, which I would actually argue makes this more true, because you have when you're in a two party system, it is political suicide to try to vote third party. It's political suicide for yourself. Maybe not for the person who's being paid off to do it. Right? Could be a rosy
Mhm.
deal for that guy, but as far as the people who actually want to be represented and have a voice in government, it really does still weigh on. It squishes the little guy. It squishes minorities still.
Mhm.
This is why we have these human rights issues. Um, Matthew, do you have thoughts on this one? And then we really want to get to the big thing that everyone's waiting here for, which is the human trafficking question. Are you back on, Matthew? We saw you dropped off for a little bit. Looks like you're on phone audio now. Okay, I will take that as a not able to unmute. If you're says maybe you're still working out your audio. We're just going to go on to the next question, and yeah, we'll catch up on the voting systems a little bit later. So, question number 3, and this is the thumbnail for this video here. Human trafficking is a major problem in America. So, proposition is that true? Is that not true? Do we believe that? So ready to answer the question, Scott?
Uh, yeah,
Okay. So, yeah, my answer is yes. Human
mine
trafficking is a
is
major problem.
mine is actually no.
Okay.
Um, uh, do you want to go first or should I?
You go first. I'll
Yeah,
probably go on for a little bit on this.
yeah, and feel free to rebut what I say. I'm fine taking criticism. I don't think it's a big major problem. I think it's disgusting when it happens. I think it's a huge problem that it does happen. Um, but I think that it human trafficking is also very complex. Sometimes it's um, people from Vietnam working in a nail salon. Um, and that's all it is they work in a nail salon, go home, otherwise normal life-ish. But they can't leave the nail salon. They have to work because of some other pressures. And that is sad because they're being forced and forcing someone to do stuff is bad. I don't think human trafficking, I feel like we have a bigger problem now um, uh, with trying to like I think the status quo is not being maintained. Like not that it's not being maintained, but it's up in the air that we don't know what way things are going to go, and that is a major. That is like what I think is the most major problem right now. If you asked me this question a year or two ago, I would agree with you. Human trafficking is a major problem. But I think uh, with this uncertainty, human trafficking can be a tip of the iceberg. Sometimes human trafficking is involves the wealthy class, and it's disgusting. It happens when they take someone who's vulnerable or whatnot to be something personally for them. Um, uh, uh, and I think sometimes maybe it's hard to see who these victims are. Maybe you know, sometimes it's like not young people, but it's like teenagers. Well, I guess that's still young, but not like the worst case scenario. And um, but I think it is part of the iceberg where it is a problem and it's used to cause other problems. Um, and especially because um, sex workers are a huge part of it. And I think even like Lauren Boebert um, was one. And like, you know, maybe she was a human trafficking victim technically. Um, and like sometimes we don't see these things. But maybe I'm going a little bit out there conspiracy wise. Um, but yeah,
So I'm not very familiar with Lauren Boebert. Can you catch me up? Because you said that what
yeah,
she's
yeah. She's the representative of Colorado, the of House in the House of Representatives of the United States. Um, the history behind it is that she was involved with Ted Cruz, and
Mhm.
that he helped platform her because of, but she was involved like as a sex worker with Ted Cruz, and so that's just a conspiracy theory. Maybe I need to look up sources with that, but you know, like that and I'm just connecting the dots here that like, you know, sex workers are often human trafficked and this woman was a sex worker. And that's all the connection I have for that point.
Okay.
But so it's kind of it's a flimsy, it's not a strong argument, but yeah. Um, but feel free to critique anything. Yeah.
Well, so like this is the thing with allegations of human trafficking, sexual abuse, etc., is that it's one of the things that tends to spread like wildfire on social media and news media is that, oh, there's this allegation of this, right? And they'll publish that because that draws people, and they're like, oh wow, there's like somebody who's involved in a sex cult or something like that. That fascinates people for some weird reason.
Mm-hmm.
They like to feel good about themselves, like, oh, we're doing a great job at helping to solve the problem and combat the evils of the world. But to your point, when I just Googled Lauren Boebert here, uh, and the first one of the first things that comes up in connection with the human trafficking question is she had what is it, legislation? She advanced legislation that she was targeting. She says massage spas have been identified by law enforcement as one of the primary locations for criminals engaged in human trafficking. Okay, that's a highly believable claim. Just
Mm-hmm.
to be fair, there was actually one just down Main Street where I live that was shut down a few years ago. It was investigated. The owner was found out. Yep, they were doing some sex trafficking there, and it's like, well, it's in some ways kind of obvious, maybe that
Mm-hmm.
that's a place where that would happen. And they're right back in business. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
went down, and they're just right back in business, and it's just like, guys, come on. And I I would submit that human trafficking is a huge problem in the United States right now, not for the same reasons that all of the Q conspiracy theorists believe, by the way. So the Q slash QAnon thing was this thing of all these Democrats are involved in, like, it wasn't just Democrats, but it was a lot of, celebrities, Hollywood. It's this claim that like 95% of our top government officials are involved in stuff. And by the way, there's very convincing evidence that Q and Trump are basically indistinguishable, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
because Trump is actually acting exactly on Q's playbook. So there's hard proof that Q is actually a government sponsored psyop. It was intended to put Trump in power on the people's trust, on their indignation at this problem, this exact problem of human trafficking, allegations of it happening massively where we can't see it, basically. And of course, Biden with the wide open borders drew made for huge suspicions on that. There are all these allegations of however many thousands of missing children. Some hundreds of thousands is what some people have claimed. And part of the problem is that there's no real like accountability for those figures. It's even been reported since Trump got back into office with all the ICE raids going on that they've recovered some number of thousands of those kids. And I'm sure there are people who could come on here and say, oh yeah, that's true, that's verified, whatever. I take issue with claims of just raw numbers and stuff that people don't actually see and don't actually know about. And this is one of the major problems with human trafficking is we just don't see and don't know about most of it. But
Mm-hmm.
what we can do is we can attack this problem from a principled perspective, such as, for example, a sex worker is literally sex trafficking. Like that, by definition, if a person, prostituting or whatever, that
Um,
is sex trafficking, right? Whether it's
yeah, therefore,
consensual or not
yeah.
is a different question, but it is literally sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and the same thing goes for pornography. Pornography is literally sex trafficking. There's a really great, I think it's the Utah Coalition Against Pornography. I attended one of
Mm-hmm.
their events years ago. There has been a really good lot of really needful research that's been happening in this area, proving that pornography is very, very, very closely connected with human trafficking. And really, ultimately, like we need to recognize they are one and the same. You
Yeah.
there's no such thing as pornography that is not human trafficking because it's the human being that is the article that's being trafficked for sex, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
consensual business relationship like in prostitution or whatever, which should be criminalized everywhere. It's still sex trafficking, and this goes all the
Mm-hmm.
way back to the early days of the territory of Utah when the government came in and it's like, Congress was like, hey, we need to outlaw polygamy. Polygamy's bad. Why did they say polygamy was bad? Well, because the Mormons, the Latter day Saints, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints, they were out there prospering in the Utah desert, being happy, having kids, and taking good care of their families, and just doing an amazing job. And our imperialistic government is like, hey, we should put a stop to that. We need to prohibit these people from practicing their religion because they feared the Latter day Saints. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
what that has to do with sex trafficking is the obvious fact that if you go through the history, they criminalized polygamy, but this was pitched in disguise of a law that would like ban forms of, you know, criminal sexual behaviors like adultery and prostitution and fornication. In reality, what they did, they went after the church. They went after the people who were married and separated them from their families and from their kids and locked up the men, stole their stuff, and prostitutes, they kept right on prostituting with like
Mhm.
the judges and the attorneys and the United States Marshals and stuff, and you know there's a lot of it. They kept on doing those things. Yeah, they'd punish that once in a while, but for the most part, this was the observation: is that they weren't going after adultery. They weren't going after real sex crimes. They just wanted to end the people who could put a stop to it, and they would use that exact argument. Anyways, real sorted 180. Um, it's a dark and disturbing topic, but I would submit as long as we have abortions, that's human trafficking. And people will say, "Oh, that's a way overbroad definition, Seth. That's ridiculous." I'm like, "No, it's literally like slaughtering babies and taking their body parts. Like that's been something that's been exposed somewhat. Is yeah, there is trafficking in babies' body parts and stuff. All this really gruesome stuff. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like,
Um,
go ahead. Sorry, you have something to
oh
say.
no, I'll let you finish your point.
Excuse me.
I was going to ask for like I'm not familiar with any sources like saying about the baby parts, but let's
Uh,
finish your point.
James O'Keefe with Project Veritas, he went undercover and got some confessions out of some people that's what they were doing at Planned Parenthood and stuff. Anyways, it does to some extent depend on like how much you trust certain sources because every bit of news that reaches our ears, everything, every interview, every secret camera recording or whatever, somebody had to go and create that and put that out there. Um, and ultimately, a lot of these allegations are. This is one of the things that makes the human trafficking problem really difficult. Is like at the end of the day, a lot of these things are just allegations, and so many people just treat them like they're gospel truth because they read them somewhere on the internet. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but like that's a problem if we can't actually back it up. And so this is one reason why I try not to make my view on the subject depend on anybody's individual allegations or even entire, propaganda machines allegations on the subject. So I'm treating it as a serious problem that does need to be addressed. I believe there are kids who are, being trafficked for whatever, nefarious purposes within our borders, and that has been abetted by illegal immigration. And Biden's administration did have a lot to do with that. But long story short, sorry, I'm getting super long-winded on this one because I care a lot about this, and I want people to actually be able to have their families be safe and secure in their families, not take kids away from their families because that's when they get trafficked, and uphold marriage. I would say uphold the family proclamation if we want to solve the problem of human trafficking. I think it really is at many points that simple. And if we allow prostitution, if we allow adultery, fornication, abortion, then people are going to be trafficked because that's what those things are and that's what they breed.
Yeah.
Basically, kids being sexualized in any setting and people being taken away from their families and used for sex, any form of that is sex trafficking.
Yeah.
And there are other forms of human trafficking too that are not sex trafficking. Obviously, slavery of any kind fits that description.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I think for me, my personal opinion is like all forms of slavery is bad no matter what. And I think getting into the general what you're saying, like disregarding like specific word like definitions. I think I come at it with a different sort of solution where yours is this is bad, we need punishment. I kind of look at it as this is bad, we need to um, uh, give them something to like throughout history. This prostitution has happened a lot of times when people are poor. And so, we gotta take care of our poor. We gotta make sure there's no poor among us to get to, and I think that will help this issue where people aren't forced into this profession because they're poor. And I think that sometimes I worry that sometimes when we punish it so much, especially the person who it happens to rather than the person enabling it, like the person doing like the prostitute rather than the person who's enabling it, whether it's the purchaser or a pimp or whatever, then we get into dangerous territory when we punish one person more than other people.
If we punish the trafficked rather than the traffickers, that's a
Yeah,
problem. That's what you're saying. Yeah, and I would agree
yeah,
with that. Yeah, and there are financial incentives too. There's financial slavery and so on. The fact
uh,
of people not having money is not itself a crime, but if there are people who are oppressing them intentionally, that creates a form
and
of bondage, a form of
I think,
slavery.
yeah, and I think nowadays there's also another issue where where sometimes it has to do with so many people um, using these, like using pornography, using spending money on it that enables some people to go into it because it's a lucrative profession. I think that's also another problem. Like, why are people doing it, and whether it's psychological or whatnot. And I think both sides, the right and the left, make a huge point of like mental health, although they come from different parts of mental health, where I think, mental health is a huge issue that needs to be discussed. And I think that is a major problem that's enabling this human trafficking is the mental health crisis in America.
Yeah, I mean, we could dive a lot more into possible or even probable causes. I would say human trafficking definitely causes mental health issues, and then of
Or I
course
think,
there's predatory behavior towards people's mental health issues that turns people into victims of trafficking because of that and other factors.
yeah, I'm saying the other vice versa too, that people who are in need of mental health traffic people. Like I don't think that's maybe sometimes people do it for greed, but like, there's also has to be something wrong with them
Yeah,
um, enough to do this. And whether we like it or not, those people need help.
yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Yeah,
like,
and I was just going to say, sex addiction is a form of mental illness for sure because it
mhm.
misprioritizes things to where people no longer have control over their own well being. Uh, but yeah, this is a very serious problem. Yeah, like I said, yeah, I do definitely believe in criminalizing human trafficking because that's one way you help it stop. I do agree with you that we should go after the people who are perpetrating it far more than the people who are, just being
Mhm.
exploited by it. And a person's decision to engage in prostitution, like yeah, we should be trying compassionately to understand like what is the root cause behind that. What are the issues? What's the breakdown here? Um, but still, not never do anything to abet that. Basically, complex issue for sure. But in some ways not, just keep God's commandments, you know
Yeah,
and we'll be
yeah,
okay. A lot of these
yeah,
issues,
sometimes
every one of these would disappear.
on an individual level, like we need to know when in this situation, keep the commandments, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Trevor
I
Larson
think we had
just
someone, yeah, I was
joined
gonna
us.
say.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and give yourself a 20-second intro, and we'll hand it over to you and see if you want to just dive in, during the headlights, and see if you want to address this burning question for us. Welcome, Trevor.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, what exactly is the question? I mean, I know we're talking about human trafficking, but what is the question in relation
Yeah,
to?
the question slash prompt here is just very generically as true or false. Human trafficking is a major problem in America.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I don't think that's even debatable. It's a very big problem. In pretty much all the cities now. I don't know that I buy into all of the conspiracy theories around it. I'm sure there's some truth to some of them, but um, there's no doubt that human trafficking, in general, is a serious problem. Um, and yeah, it's a complicated issue. But yeah, anyway, I'm Trevor and live in Gilbert, Arizona, and yeah, happy to be here. Just wanted to uh, meet some people and talk about some of these issues. I think it's good to talk about this stuff. We need a more educated society. So, um, yeah, happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Mhm.
It's great to have you join us. Yeah, I know there are a lot of people who are very, very interested in this topic, and we just to kind of give you a very quick recap of where we've been so far, we talked about the party system and how it misrepresents people, resulting in a loss of protections for minorities, and in particular. And so, and then that's kind of how we got to this issue. We both kind of gave our response to this. We both agree that it's an issue. Scott maybe less so, but more of just, what are the oh, I'm not misrepresenting you, Scott, but but yeah, I believe it's a major issue. We talked about pornography, people, selling themselves, prostitution, and of course, it is more important to go after the perpetrators than the people who are, in some way victimized by a system, right? And I definitely agree with that. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
gonna
it's
go.
complicated too because sometimes the people who are supposedly the perpetrators are also the victims.
Hmm.
So like for example, there's people who, so my wife's one of her best friends that she went to college with is what does she work for? She works for, it's not CPS. Is it CPS? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
something. It's
Yes. Some states call it differently, but
Yeah, no, I'm saying I don't know if she works for CPS or something like it, but anyway, she's some type of social worker kind of thing like that. And so she knows all about this stuff, and she was saying, yeah, lots of times what happens is, prostitutes or something like, people like that, they get, sucked in to something like this, and then, um, that's kind of their only way of providing for themselves, and um, and then they can't really get out because maybe they have a criminal record or something, and so they can't get a job. And then if they did that, if they came out and said this, they showed what they were doing, then they'd be criminalized again even further. And so it's like there's not really there's not really a good escape path for them, you know what I mean?
That's a really great point, and that actually does highlight one of the reasons why our representation in government matters a ton, and the laws we have on the books. Because the laws, believe it or not, like one of the reasons why we have such a huge problem with human trafficking is because the system is actually designed to inflict that on people.
Hmm.
Right? That is to say, if you have this system that basically makes it more difficult for a person to get a job outside of trafficking once they've been trafficked or trafficked themselves or whatever, then factually speaking, that is abetting the problem. And
Yeah.
it's our people in the legislature who are doing that. We should recognize that. We should recognize that that's who's doing this. That's who's pulling these strings to make this happen. People who don't have a clue about cause and effect have no business making policies about cause and effect. Um,
Right.
so, and yeah, that's huge because the goal of punishment should be reform. If the effect of our laws and punishments is just revenge, class division, hysteria, fear, then and in any way reinforcing the problems instead of helping to solve them, then we're doing it wrong. And we need to take a step back and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So that's what I think we really need to pay attention to here as regards human rights. I'm going to go ahead and share a different screen here, but I think this really comes down to um, if we want to stop the problem of human trafficking, here's what we need to do. We need to return to the family proclamation. Because every dysfunction, I just mentioned this with Scott a couple minutes ago, every dysfunction that results in human trafficking originates with a breakdown of the family unit. Basically, as long as you have a wholesome, healthy, functioning family intact, where the father is present, presiding and providing and protecting, and the mother is able to nurture, then you have the antithesis of human trafficking. You have human safety, you have peace, you have actual care and well-being for individuals. And so this last second to last paragraph and last paragraph here saying, uh, warning to the perpetrators here, and it does happen. There are people who cause problems and break their own families without necessarily having that inflicted on them by outside forces. So just in a nutshell here, we warn that individuals who violate covenants of chastity, who abuse spouse or offspring, or who fail to fulfill family responsibilities will one day stand accountable before God. Further, we warn that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets. We call upon responsible citizens and officers of government everywhere to promote those measures designed to maintain and strengthen the family as the fundamental unit of society. So, I mean, there we have it. If people want to drop off the live stream right now and just say, there we go, problem solved, human rights issue addressed, I would submit this is the number one takeaway. If we want to actually stop the problem of human trafficking, we need to strengthen families. And there's no
You
other
want to
way of going
stop,
about it.
honestly, almost any, like pretty much any problem in society. Like
Yeah,
99% of problems are solved by having strengthening the families.
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, if you look
Um,
at the fall of Rome, for example, what was it? It was the implosion of the family unit. And then they got wiped out by barbarians. Like, it's the same story every single time.
mhm.
Excuse me for
Um,
1 minute, gentlemen. My daughter is needing my attention for 1 second. I'll be right back.
You're good. Thanks. Okay, Scott,
okay.
you had something to say?
Yeah, I would caution against saying the solution is this document and it being a broad document, giving broad solutions. I would instead say like a good solution is following the spirit or following our intuition, where we like I know some people there's a common issue where a lot of people become disaffected by the church, and some of these people become disaffected because maybe they were with a leader and the leader may have done something improper. And I think parents need to be receptive and like I mean intuitive and know like, hey, this doesn't seem right. Something doesn't seem off or something seems off. And to like put their safety of their family first, put their family first. I think having a good principles is a good way to tell people, but I think um, with things like this, we need to have specific solutions, especially if we, from what we see and what we think through, having specific solutions that we could say, hey, um, especially I know um, it's good, like, a lot of people like hating on people who create laws. But when we like having a specific solution, we could say, hey, making a law like this, in my opinion, would help. And telling that to our representatives. And you know what, maybe it's like, part of it is not like, it's their job to create the laws. But like if we're able to say, hey, um, having specific solutions is good. Um, and maybe I'm going on too much of a rant about it, but uh, in my life, I know a lot of people like disaffected by the church, and like I'm not personally one of them. I'm a member, but I think um, like families are a lot of things, and it is good to strengthen the family unit. Um, and yeah, um,
Yeah, I'm going to try to sum that up and just say, summarize that and say that is called for in the Family Proclamation is to work with, legislators, policymakers to create and
mhm,
uphold specific measures that are helpful. So in the case of
mhm,
somebody who's caught in a cycle of prostitution, for example, you'd want to
mhm,
analyze that problem, understand it, and say, okay, what does this person need?
mhm.
What do the people who are caught in the cycle need? What are the incentivizing factors? What are the things that sabotage them?
Yeah,
And we
maybe a
identify those.
process
And
for their criminal record to be expunged for certain crimes. Certain crimes, allow criminal records to be expunged, just like how they do with minors. When the minor has a criminal record, they're able to do things to eventually get it expunged or removed completely. I
yeah,
think um, stronger privacy laws like that, are like a possible effective solution. I think some of the people involved in a lot of the big human trafficking stories we hear about started off on the fringes, and so getting them out of the fringes, and back into society is what we need.
Yeah, help people have wholesome integration, helpful,
Hmm.
good
Yeah,
things to do, good community. All those would
habitability.
obviously help. Yeah. So and about the bishops thing, I know I've heard of people who are concerned about that as well. My
Hmm.
awareness of it is that it's very rare.
Hmm.
It has happened before. There have been like whole wards
Hmm.
that have just had people disaffected because of something like that. My take on that is just second article of faith. We believe that men will be punished for their own sins and not for Adam's transgression. And so I reject classism, basically. I reject the idea that, oh, this thing happened at a Walmart once. There was a stabbing or a shooting that happened at a Walmart, or there was a guy who was corrupt who ran a U.S. bank branch or whatever. Therefore, all Walmarts you must avoid, all U.S. banks you must issue and just run away from. I reject those arguments, and I recognize that individual bad things do happen. But we're going to
Yeah,
get probably
and
more into some of these things on the next few questions, by the way.
yeah, and I hate to like string you through like a bad example, but like I just see it as like a thing you say, oh, there's a shooting and stabbing in a Walmart. I'm going to avoid all Walmarts is like, is a overbroad generalization. But if
It's an
it's like if
associational
it's your
fallacy for sure. Yeah.
yeah, if it's your local Walmart, if shootings happen all the time at your local Walmart, maybe you should avoid your local Walmart. Um, but I guess that's nothing to do with what we're talking about. Um, but
Yeah.
I think I see it for me because, um, or I just worry about it for me because like I'm in a very small branch uh, of my church, and sometimes someone called as a leader is called because they're uh, they are someone who's there, you know, um, and that happens when you're like the people who come is like number like 10 or 20 people, and so it's like okay, some things do happen, so like it's good for people to exercise caution or to and to follow the rules in place that
Exactly. Yeah.
help prevent it.
That's why we have the church handbook. We have these checks in place in the
Hmm.
church to help prevent this, and leaders are vetted.
Hmm.
It doesn't prevent people from going bad. I mean, there was Judas Iscariot for crying out loud, but people
Yeah.
do get to choose for themselves. But I'm going to jump
Hmm.
over to question number 4 because we're probably getting tight on time here, and I have been keeping us on a timer. But
Thank you.
let's just quickly go over this question. I want to burn through several in succession if we can here. Just keep it lively. So
How
this
many
question
questions do
is
you have?
so it's a grand total of 12, I think. Double check
Oh,
that
and we're
because
on
we're
four.
on
Shoot.
4.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I could drop off the last several. We could split this up. Some of these
Or
questions are
yeah.
just kind of designed to be thought provoking, get us to think about the real issues, identify the human rights abuses, identify brainstorm solutions, reconcile with the Constitution. Let's dive in. So proposition here is the roots of human trafficking go beyond the previous administration. The previous administration meaning Joe Biden in the presidency. So true or false? All right, three,
True.
two, one. True.
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 Yeah. I don't think this one requires a ton of discussion. Just like I don't know, with all of the exposure of stuff that's been going on, all the things that Doge has been doing, all the crime, all the fraud, all the everything's, and basically Trump living up to the Q movement, but in some ways maybe not touting that because he's probably not proud of his internet
Hmm.
propaganda psyop there. Um, at least beyond those who are already on the in crowd, right? But he's still following it to a T, and it's just kind of like, and the narrative there, though, of course, is that it does go back a long while, Hollywood and left and the media and all this. Um, and frankly, honestly, this is something I found somewhat compelling about the Q narrative is this idea that like, oh yeah, that explains a lot. That explains like all the really messed up stuff, all the perversion we keep on seeing from Hollywood because people who aren't perverts don't produce that kind of content. They don't. If you're perverted, you produce perverted content and stuff. And
Hmm.
so like a lot of it does, in my mind, have a explaining power, and that's at least a semi compelling argument. As for all of the nitty gritty details of, you know, this is where we get into the internet conspiracy and rumor zone, frankly, is if so and so says specifically, I know that so and so, raped a child or something like that. I know it because I saw it on the internet. I saw that some anonymous person on an internet message board alleged that that was true, and that has to be true. Like, that's where I just say, guys, take a step back, and someone would actually have to be a witness to that. And there's a proper venue for witnessing, bearing one's witness about a crime that someone else committed in our country. Because we have law and order. And just spilling stuff onto some anonymous messaging board on the internet, or even some scandalous allegation to the news media or whatever, that's a really poor substitute for actually having due process. So that's where I come from on that. I'm a believer that it does go way, way back. And per our previous conversation, with prostitution and everything, does human trafficking go back to like as long as the party system has been in power? Yeah, I believe so. It's a highly plausible argument, and it's a question of prevalence and degrees too. Because like if anyone was trafficked anywhere in this country, then you'd say, oh, that's a problem. I mean, slavery is human trafficking, for crying out loud. So yeah, all the way back to our founding fathers, they had to deal with a very real human trafficking problem that was out in the open, and they designed the Constitution in such a way that they could overcome that problem. So, anyways, that's my take on it. It's not a new thing. It's not, it's just the last 4 years with the open borders. Yes, that exacerbated the problem, but that's not the source of the problem.
Yeah, my wife actually just got back home from a book club, and so I just went off camera for 2 seconds. But she read for the book club for the last time. They talked about a lot of the history of it was a lot about African American and African people, and I think I don't know 17 1800s, I don't know, somewhere around there, hundreds of years ago, and they talked about how like obviously slavery is a huge problem, but like the lots of the people who were the perpetrators of slavery were actually blacks. Like there was blacks on blacks, so like blacks would enslave others in Africa, right? And then they would sell those slaves to these Europeans, and the Europeans would take them back to America or wherever, right? And it's an actually awful, when you hear some of the details, it's awful what they did to these people. It's just inhumane. It's like, thank goodness this would never happen. I wouldn't say never happen today, but a lot of these things we've cleaned up, thank goodness, but we have a long ways to go. But yeah, all that to say, it's not a new issue, unfortunately. Unfortunately or unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm just going to bounce one quick response to that off, and we'll go to Scott. And that is, it's as old as time, basically. I mean, Satan is here. He's on the earth. He's tempting people. There are systemic things that can prop up and promote human trafficking, including bad laws, bad policies, lack of enforcement, poor enforcement. All that stuff can help contribute to it, but the ultimate cause is that Satan's here and all his devils, his minions, and they're tempting people. And some people fall for temptation. And so like it's kind of obvious and kind of like, I won't call it natural. It's natural according to the natural man, right? But it's not inevitable. Right. It's not impossible to prevent. But if our vision of utopia is that we have to have some law that magically makes it never happen again, I don't think that's going to happen, right? Kind of like it's similar argument as with gun control, right? It's to say, let's lock up all the guns so that no one ever gets shot anymore. It's like, let's lock up all the people so that no one ever gets molested anymore or trafficked. It's like, no. You need to have the discernment to identify crime and punish crime and, identify the aggravating factors and so on and do what you can to help. Anyway, sorry, Scott.
Yeah. Going back to your question, again, I also agree. This is a problem that's been here for a while, like all these problems. I had heard something where immigration was tougher on, I think you were talking about how Biden had bad immigration, but I heard immigration so far has been tougher under Biden than it has for Trump, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I think these are all problems, and I think something that's lost on a lot of people especially when they talk about like gun control and different things, is like sometimes the solutions are different depending on the place you're at. I feel like, like maybe a big city state, like if you live in like somewhere that's like just a big city, maybe getting rid of gun, like, and that's the whole nation, like whatever. Maybe some solutions work better, like getting rid of guns or whatnot, and things work differently for different locations. And I think that's lost on a lot of people. Like, there are multiple ways, multiple solutions, and sometimes a solution in one place isn't a solution in another place. But
Very true.
we have the whole goal of trying to better our society, and we need to think through things logically and figure out, okay, what will work and what can work, and what do we have like no way of like getting a solution for, like realizing what we can change and realizing what we can't change.
Yeah, for sure. Could you qualify that? I'm curious about something you said. You said that the immigration has been stricter under Biden than under Trump.
Yeah, I saw a tweet. I forgot the guy's name. He's a conservative guy, but there was like a tweet Trump did about immigration was like 20K, and then someone replied back that the average people sent back was 30K under Biden. Oh man, I forget
Oh,
the guy's name.
the rate of return, the rate of capture and return to
Yeah,
their home.
yeah, return.
Yeah, I
And
think arguably that
Oh,
would be increased simply because the borders were more porous and therefore there were more people attempting it,
yeah,
more
yeah, that's
detentions
complicated.
correspondingly. So maybe it's a matter of which metric you're looking at.
yeah,
But yeah,
Agree with that, yeah.
that'd be one that could spike unfavorably. On the gun control argument, I would say, yeah, if your entire population consists of 3 year olds, then yeah, the parents should have
mhm.
a strict gun control policy. But if you have a society of adults, then they deserve to
Yeah.
protect themselves.
And sometimes
Uh,
there's like a solution that's in between where mandatory military service is like in some places where gun control laws like Singapore or something where they have like mandatory military service, but like so people are trained, but there are gun control laws or something. So, although I may be wrong on that fact. But I don't know. I'm not too sure about the specifics. And I was thinking more not towards gun control. I was thinking more towards other things, but that was what we
right.
talked about recently.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and burn through a few more questions here. This one's interesting, especially from a human rights perspective. So, mob mentality is the best way to root out and prosecute corruption. Answers in 3, 2, 1. False.
yes.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I'm
All
sorry, what
right.
was the
Sorry, the
question?
question. I'll repeat it. Sorry, I just kind of blew into this one. Mob mentality is the best way to root out and prosecute corruption. It's,
Hopefully we all agree that's false.
yeah, it's a little bit tongue in cheek
Uh,
here, but I have an example here to kind of hopefully illustrate the point for discussion. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. There's this tweet from Inevitable West, which sounds honestly like a Manifest Destiny type of nationalist movement. It says Robert Jenrick has just called for the prosecution of officials involved in the Muslim grooming gang cover up. So several keywords repeated in succession here. Those little girls will be avenged. And then Elon Musk, CEO of Twitter and the head of the Doge department in the White House, says, good, they should receive the severest punishment, hang them for treason. Okay, I'll just explain my reasoning here. If I'm coming out, just seeing this issue out of the cold, let's say I'm an ordinary Joe on Twitter. I see this. I'm like, oh, the CEO of Twitter thinks this, that these people should be hanged for treason, severest possible punishment. And my mind just automatically kind of greps this for keywords. And I'm like, okay, avenging little girls, Muslim grooming gang cover up. So that conditions me. The next time I see Muslim grooming gang cover up, little girls being avenged, whatever, since that's all the context that's given here on this post, I don't remember if this is a clickable link that goes to some news story or video or something, but this is what people are exposed to. These are the impressions that are being placed before people's brains, and then our brains rewire and condition themselves to say, aha, treason, hang them, hang them. Ah, Muslim, hang them, grooming, hang him, gang, hang him. And maybe it's all the keywords combined. I'm not a psychologist, but I recognize the effect of impressions and impressionability, and I will just cite one major constitutional concern here is that the Constitution does say that Congress has the power to prescribe the punishment for treason. Um, some bureaucrat sitting in an office, however wealthy he might be, however popular he might be, appointed by the president, whatever, he doesn't have authority to prescribe the punishment for treason. And so that's ridiculous on its face right there that he's prescribing the punishment. And it's also ridiculous that he is, kind of arrogating to himself judge, jury, and executioner right here. Like literally all of them. And I'm just like, guys, you can receive a report. Maybe this is a rumor. Maybe it's a true story. Even if it's a true story, I object in very strong terms, actually, to people taking it into their own hands to be like, go and inflict this punishment on this person. I just sentenced this person to death. He's like, envision a little lawyer, it's a judge.
Come on, man, that's what the Second Amendment's for.
That's where if it's happening to you, or your own kids, or your family, and somebody in your own view, then yeah, you have probable cause on your side if that's the case.
I'm just messing. No.
But yeah, just inciting, frankly, people who have never witnessed the facts of the case, and you're asking them to be the jury. Seems a little information low, very suspect. Anyway, Scott, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if Trevor wanted to go first or
no, go ahead.
All right, cool. So I gave a contrary answer that yes, and I feel like one thing you mentioned, Seth, is like a social media headline or a news headline. And I feel like one of the things that I hear a lot nowadays, or a popular topic that's been for the past couple of years, is parasocial relationships, where people watch the news and form a relationship with, maybe they feel like they have a relationship with the person talking or the person on the news, of whoever it might be. Maybe it's their favorite streamer or whatnot. And I feel like, or maybe it's the social media app they use. And I feel like that conditions people. And should they take the matter into their own hands? In that case, no, because they don't know the facts of their case. Seth is right, absolutely right. They shouldn't. However, the founders of our Constitution, of the Revolutionary War, they did fight a war and they sort of did fight using sort of mob mentality. But they were well educated about what was going on, the issues, how it was affecting them. And I feel in European countries and other countries, even though they're a lot smaller, change has happened in governments through mass protests, whether it's like Arab Spring or European countries. Those things have happened through mass protests and the people having a mentality, and that does change things. That does change things, and sometimes it changes them for the better and for the worse. Actually, I think that's probably in all cases. There's good and there's bad that comes with the change. But it does happen through a mob mentality, and I think the framers may have had that in mind, was like when they created the Second Amendment. Although I feel like a lot of people realize that, or at least feel, I don't know, maybe it's the truth or not, that non-murderous protests are better, better for the way out of it. But when for corruption, if people are educated on the issue, well enough educated, and I've heard both sides in an impartial way, whether it's a jury or something. I think juries are the best way to root out, prosecute corruption. But I guess maybe I would go against this because it's not the best way. My mentality is not the best way, but sometimes, especially with the people in the Constitution, who formed the United States, for them, they felt like it was the only way to root out the corruption back then. And I agree with you guys with most of the points here, that like with the point you guys are making where we shouldn't like um like people shouldn't attack other people because they hear someone did something bad. No, it should be through a trial. But um I feel like through peaceful means, like, or some, like, mostly peaceful means, people, whether it's like, a big protest or people getting out there and, you see these town hall meetings where people are yelling at their representative because the representative is going out supporting something that the higher ups want to support and not what the people want, like having a like bombarding your representative then is maybe the best way, and maybe that is a bit of a mob mentality. um and maybe we're just arguing over syntax at this point, but
Well,
yeah.
well, I'm going to try to, condense that and just say, okay, First Amendment, right to assembly, right? That
Hmm.
could look like a mob, but it's not necessarily a mob. Right to the press, not
Hmm.
doesn't have to be a mob. It can transform into a mob. And the other thing I heard was, if you're fighting a war, like the American Revolution against the British, the redcoats, then it's there is prima facie evidence when somebody else who's an enemy soldier and he's pointing his gun at you, that you should take that guy out before he takes you out. And maybe it's a mob mentality in that sense, right? But at least
Hmm.
there's that aspect to it that, hey, you've chosen which team you're on,
Hmm.
and your people say it's to the death, and so we are fighting for our lives and our freedoms, and so we
Yeah.
accept those terms, right? If it's a war, um,
I may be wrong, but I think the Boston Tea Party was sort of a mob mentality thing,
yeah,
uh,
and
and
I don't
so.
necessarily agree that the Boston Tea Party was a good thing, by the way.
Well, I think that's where we like maybe differ is like, hey, I think sometimes good can happen through mobs. Like, sometimes there's good that can happen.
Well,
If and I think a key, I didn't get to say this, but I think a key is not having a parasocial relationship to find out things. Like rather maybe trusting in other people and figuring. I think the thing with the Boston Tea Party is they were worried about themselves, and I think when we're just trying to create a better community for ourselves, interacting with our community, and then someone says something like, um, I don't know the facts of this, but one thing I hear about is like Texas and um, their their school system, like there being issues there, and maybe like other places have bad school systems too. Like actually, what? Let's just say school systems in general and bad, like it not being the best, and people having a um, coming at as not like a violent mob. I think violent mob mentality is bad when they come out and want to kill people. When they come out and want to kill people, that's bad. But when they want someone to change, and sometimes I think when uh, like maybe extended protest or whatever, like for a long time until that change happens, or even aligning yourselves with some parts of government, like what happened in South Korea, where the leader wanted to take power, but the people protesting aligned themselves with the members of the legislature and physically went into the building, helped them into the building so they can take and broke into that building so the legislators can take a vote. I feel like that type of thing when you can be a good mob.
so yeah, just to be super clear here, I guess there are distinctions obviously between putting pressure on an elected representative or whatever, because if the public gets wind of the fact that did something corrupt, obviously we have the ability. I would still, I think, lump that into First Amendment as long as it's within the appropriate bounds. Let's go ahead and go to Trevor, and then we'll jump to the next question.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's I think it's, I'll put it this way, maybe a necessary evil at some point. At sometimes I want to call it evil, but yeah, I remember I posted this. I posted about this before, where there's like there is yeah. I was talking to him in context of like, masculinity. And so like there's like different masculine traits that um are just natural to boys and men, whatever. And that you actually some of these are good and some of them well, a lot of them, I'll put it this way. I'm not gonna call them good or bad. I would say immature and mature would be the better way of framing it. Um, so a lot of the like male tendencies in an immature way can be uh, constructive if you just refine it a little bit, right? So as it relates to this particular conversation, there's like defiant rebellion is like would be like energy of like you know defiance of authority and whatever kind of thing like that. It's just kind of childish. Like there's a time to defy authority, but you get what I'm saying. And I would say like the more mature version of that is like it's called principled resistance. So if you see something that just deeply violates what you believe are your principles, whether that be some type of moral law framework, you know, something being unconstitutional, then I think there's value in principled resistance and fighting against that. Um, I think that sometimes you do need I won't say mob mentality, but like kind of an uprising, right? But to what extent? It's like I think the First Amendment is put there for a reason for it's like freedom of speech, but like that doesn't mean freedom of like anything else, right? So it's like you're not going to go burn down someone's house or whatever to make a statement. That's just mob mentality, right? But if it's like peaceful protest, stuff like that, and bringing awareness to an issue, that's where, I would totally be okay with that. Even if I don't agree with that movement, I support their right to do that. So
Yeah. Trevor took the words right out of my mouth.
cool.
So I think we're agreeing that there is a cause, like there's an appropriate time and a place for a rebellion, an uprising, a revolution, a revolutionary war defensively to gain your freedoms or preserve them. I just for the fun of it, I went to Oxford dictionaries here and looked up mob to get a concrete definition here, and it says a large crowd of people, especially one that is disorderly and intent on causing trouble or violence. And honestly, I would just pose this question: when you picture the Revolutionary War soldiers and the founding fathers of this nation, do you picture a large disorderly group that's intent on causing trouble or violence?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great
Really?
point. I mean, I think that's the difference between like I was saying, unruly rebellion versus principled resistance, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And something I'd like to add that kind of goes to the point I was trying to make is that sometimes, maybe the American Revolution looked like it. Or, there could be something like if there was cameras back then, they could have shown the camera angle and it would look like a mob, you know? And so I'm just encouraging caution before people label things as a mob, is what I'd say.
Okay. So you want the approach to categorizing whether or not something is unruly to be orderly.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would agree with that. We do need to have precision. It does need to be principled. But yeah, when I picture the Patriots of 1776, I see an orderly group, and I would submit that anytime people take it into their own hands to attack something in a disorderly way, um, their revolution is not succeeding. It's not going to pan out the way they hoped. So, but they were well organized, well ordered there.
Yes,
Um,
I will say orderly, yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't be fuming and angry and mad. Because I think
Mhm.
sometimes, anger can be a good thing if you use it, if you direct it appropriately.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pull a Matthew 5:22 there, and I'm going to pull up the next question for us. Um, yeah, just
I
make
know what
sure.
you're saying. That's
Don't be angry with your brother.
not angry with your brother. It's more just a violation of like justice, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Question number 6. Grand juries are more expensive than keyboard warriors and rabbit holes. I'm putting this up here. I should have posted one of the replies
Please
I got
clarify
on
this.
social media today. So there's some backstory. Sorry, the backstory here is I've been bombarded uh, more than a little bit on this point because I've been talking up grand juries. And there are people who are like, well, we shouldn't have those because they're expensive. And then I go to another message thread with somebody's saying the exact same thing. And I'm just like, wait a minute. Do you genuinely believe that, citizen-led investigation and prosecution is too expensive? If we think it's too expensive,
All right.
doesn't that explain? Sorry, I'm tipping my hand here. Doesn't that explain why there's so much corruption in our government right now? If we think that it's too expensive to have the citizens actually care and actually take a minute to go and look at what is, and go document it and go and issue a presentment against somebody, say, hey, this guy's committing a crime. Hey, look, he's violating his oath of office. Hey, look, he's breaking his oath to the Constitution. Anyways, if we think it's too expensive, so that's kind of where this comes in, is because what I'm seeing is the fuel behind Doge right now. The idea of its inevitability stems largely from groupthink on social media, from people who are like, well, we just don't know of any other alternative. It's an argument from ignorance, where they're like, well, Doge is a good thing. That's part of the context here, is because I've been saying, no, we never needed Doge. No, it's not constitutional. There's a better way that actually works. It doesn't centralize power. So
Can we
there
talk
are,
about Doge? Because this is the topic that
Mhm.
this is a topic I've thought a moderate amount, and it is obviously controversial. Um, but I would like to hear it from all angles because I don't, it's very easy to get in your blind spot.
yeah.
So could we discuss the
Let's discuss
And
that.
I think
Let's,
this question can be summed as like, is Doge good or bad? Like, do we think
Let's-
Doge is
Right.
So that is the context in which this question arose. I'm going to go ahead and try to be a little bit less mob-like this time, and I'm going to give us each 2 minutes, okay, to just answer the question, and then throw out an application with Doge or any discussion you want to have. Is that okay? And then maybe we have like maybe a minute each for rebuttals, cross-examination, whatever. It's not a debate, but it's like discussion, whatever. Sorry.
all right?
Is that okay?
Yes.
So I'm gonna go ahead and set myself a little stopwatch here. So okay, I'm gonna say okay. Let's go ahead and do our 3, 2, 1. Give our answer to the query, to the prompt, and then let's each go into our explanation. So grand juries are more expensive than keyboard warriors and keyboard warriors and rabbit holes. Sorry, meaning people who go research stuff on the internet and think they're experts and stuff. So 3, 2, 1. False.
False.
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to understand this
Sorry,
one.
it's a weird parse. My apologies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
grand juries are more expensive than keyboard warriors.
I mean, maybe we could simplify this to the Doge question. Like, is Doge is good, true or false?
Doge is necessary.
oh,
Let me
Doge
ask that question.
True or false?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of that one?
Oof. You have to push me. I'm going to say true.
Okay. I'm going to say false without even being pushed.
Same false.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 2 minutes to explain. Is that okay?
Me?
And I'm going to take my 2 minutes and we'll go around.
Go ahead.
Okay. So my take on it, grand juries. So grand juries are citizen involvement. One of the reasons why they're vastly more efficient than keyboard warriors and these internet conspiracy rabbit holes, where you're being spoon-fed propaganda by some centralized source, which is what those rabbit holes are. They're propaganda outlets for the deep state, frankly. And they camouflage it in social media to make you think you're getting unbiased coverage, when in fact you're not. It's still a state-run apparatus. We've already demonstrated that with X. But grand juries, they actually get to go and they get to subpoena witnesses and evidence and testimony, and they actually get to hear the facts from the people who observe them firsthand. They have the power to do that. And so their information is going to be way better. Their time is going to be much better spent, and it's a relatively small, tight-knit group, not tight-knit in the sense that they know each other beforehand, but like it's an efficient group. It's an effective group, frankly, as opposed to hundreds of thousands of people going out and researching claims where they have no way to verify, right? So objectively speaking, the grand juries are vastly more efficient, actually, and effective than the keyboard warriors, and so they're consequently a lot less expensive. So if people's argument is that we can't afford grand juries, well, just take all the internet keyboard warriors out there and actually summon grand juries. And if some of them are actually smart at finding info, really good at going down and tracking down information and stuff, then surely they have the capacity to, summon witnesses and hear evidence and actually come to a coherent conclusion about this guy's probably guilty versus not. So let's go ahead and arraign him. Let's have a trial. So this is, I think, a slam dunk in favor of grand juries. So if people want to actually be involved in government, we should be restoring grand juries. We should be participating in grand juries. That is how you get citizen involvement. And the whole social media front is just a fake because you have mob mentality instead of the real thing. Sorry, that's 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
All right. So I'll go. I agree that crap. So let me just start by saying Doge was is crippling the U.S. by firing and getting rid of a lot of workers. And meanwhile, the corruption was already being rooted out through, there were already trials against corruptive individuals like Senator Bob Menendez, who's a Democrat in New Jersey, who there was already a trial underway even during the Biden administration. And then even the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. Those were already investigations that were going on and against corruption. And so having additional these additional things is just meant to cripple the United States, I believe, through firing workers or whatnot. Like the USAID, that whether we like it or not, crippled the U.S. military industrial complex. And firing, but like there's also the firing of the U.S. workers, like forest service individuals, which have been rolled back, or the IRS, where like sometimes it's just regular low-level people, and I don't think having so many people unemployed and getting people like farmers angry at you is necessarily a good means of someone keeping government, you know,
Yeah.
and that's I yield the remainder of my time.
Okay. All right, Trevor, what are your thoughts?
Okay, yeah. So this is a messy issue, and I understand why it's so controversial. And to be honest, I'm a little ambivalent about this about Doge. However, this all being said, I still am somewhat in favor of it, and here's why. So we have seen from sad experience just how poorly, like on both sides of the aisle, that like people always like talk about how they're going to cut the budget, and they never do, right? And we are sitting on, trillions and trillions of dollars of federal deficit, right? And it's not going away until we make some massive changes. And I know people talk about, hey, it's a constitutional whatever, but I don't think that's correct because um, Congress's job is to set the budgets, but it's, just like anything, Congress's job is to set laws and the executive branch is to execute those laws, right? Now, so that the same thing with budget, power of the courts. They have the executive branch does not have the capability of setting budgets, but they are responsible for executing those budgets, right? Now, that being said, they don't necessarily have to, if it's discretionary spending, they do not have to spend that money, right? And so making cuts and showing how much waste, fraud, and abuse there is eye-opening because one, even if we don't spend the budget, like even if there's the budget, we don't spend it all, that contributes to cutting the budget, right? And if we expose it more, then it can hopefully get enshrined into law by coming back to the Congress and be like, hey, we actually really don't need all this. So I'm about up with my time. All things considered, it's it's messy, it's complicated. I don't like maybe some of the things, some of the ways it's implemented. However, if nothing else, it just shines a light on this issue. That's important to me. So
All right, cool. I'm gonna
Can
take.
I have a minute for
Yeah, go ahead.
commenting?
Mhm.
With um, what Trevor mentioned with budget, I believe from that the spending will just end up being used for tax cuts under Trump's tax plan. So what it
yeah,
is we're decreasing revenue because he wants to decrease revenue, decrease tax for billionaires. We need to decrease our spending. And that's what I think what he's doing here is he's doing all this to decrease the revenue we're getting. So we can decrease the revenue his friends are getting, decrease
yeah.
the revenue that would become from billionaires. And I think,
That's
that
a,
makes it
sorry.
unnecessary.
I didn't mean to
Sorry,
interrupt. I'm sorry.
you go.
No,
No,
I'm
you
sorry. I didn't
can.
mean to interrupt you. I apologize. And that's a separate issue. I am against the tax cuts, and that's as a conservative, that's against my normal principles. But I am actually against the tax cuts.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is that's their end goal. That's the whole reason those exist is for the tax cuts. That's my belief
Hmm.
is why they're there in the first place is so they can get their tax cuts. That's their end goal.
Hmm. It could be. I think it's also there's ulterior motives for Mr. Musk, right?
Hmm.
For him to get funding for him to go to Mars, right?
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
so there is that. It is messy, it is complicated. I'm not saying it isn't. It certainly is. Um, the, at the same time, Musk is Musk is known for compressing timeframes. For example, they said
Hmm.
it would take him 10 years to get this project done for, getting a rocket up or something, and it took 8 months, right?
Hmm.
Because he said, no, it's got to be done in 6 months, and it ended up being 8 months, but still 8 months compared to 10 years, and it's bumpy. Now he is a bit of a jerk, from what I understand, to work for, right?
Cracks the
And
Hmm.
whip.
what's that?
Cracks the whip.
Yeah, but
Big time.
he does know how to shake things up, So there's probably like the tendency seems to be with this new administration, cut all funding immediately, see what breaks with that once you cut that, okay, this is broken, okay, let's refund that. And then um just incrementally see what's really necessary, and then if it's not really necessary, then it doesn't need to be funded, you know.
Hmm.
And so I really like that level of aggression because it's just sorely needed right now with how, I mean, if we don't make a change with the federal deficit, I mean, it's going to be disastrous for the
Yeah.
financial economy. So, and
And
the
I
US dollar and all that.
Yeah, I worry that some of these programs are meant to save will end up costing us more money, like whether it's through healthcare. I know an argument a lot of people have made is that the the healthcare industry um, caused the healthcare industry costs America a lot of money, the insurance industry, and it would be cheaper to have universal healthcare. I've heard people argue that before. And
Hmm.
if that's true, then something we should look into, or at
Hmm.
least if it's more expensive, that's where I prefer this money going rather than going to tax cuts for
Yeah.
billionaires or things.
Yeah. No, I can get on board with that. My general principle for me, as far as like, I'm I'm somewhere between fiscal conservative and centrist, but I would say if we could radically reform, like incrementally, I'll put it this way, if we could incrementally reform Social Security, and
Hmm.
that would be huge. I would I would almost be able to concede though, like with Medicare for all, I know it's a very Bernie
Hmm.
Sanders type thing, which is usually against my idea, but I do think it's kind of true that healthcare is problematic as it currently stands,
Hmm.
um, being left to the private sector, right?
Yeah.
It's messy. So I would be okay with a Medicare for all type system, but
Hmm.
that would also require I don't know. That would require some massive other changes. So
Yeah,
So I'm
I
gonna
agree. I agree. It
I'm gonna
would
reel us
require a
back in
lot.
here. So
I heard the recording stopped, by the way. Does
yeah,
that?
sorry,
yeah, that's
we
because
got off
my
track. Sorry, Seth.
that's because I ran out of disk space. So
Oh,
that's where we're
Oh,
at. But anyways,
we got
no,
off track. Sorry, Seth.
it's still doing the live stream, so that's still gonna be there. But yeah, so my take, frankly, on Doge, and one of many reasons why it's not necessary, and is in fact a very, very, very bad thing, and why I'm not at all impressed by it, also, is because all of the financial fraud that they're uncovering, I already knew was there, times like 10 or 100, if I can be super blunt. And part of the reason why this is so is because if you look at what inflationary currency, fiat, is, and if you go back to even when the Federal Reserve was created, which was not the first institution, by the way, that issued fiat currency in the United States, um, but since that time, you can use an inflation calculator based on the nominal figures, and it's a more than a 3,000% inflation rate. Meaning any money that was put in a bank account back in 1913, I'm sorry, but as of today, it has like less than 3% of its original purchasing power. Where did it go? The federal government literally just stole it through this non-governmental organization, and there's no accounting, there's no accountability for that. They've told us where perhaps a fraction of that money has gone, but the existence of some huge warehouse full of pallets full of cash somewhere in Pakistan or Russia or wherever, or wire transfers of undisclosed sums, that's not falsifiable. And that's one of the huge issues that I have with this, is because Elon Musk's Doge and his attempt there and at providing transparency and so on, and Trump's regime here is flatly dishonest. It is flatly dishonest because even though they're exposing corruption that I'm not questioning that it's real, but they're just showing us this tip of the iceberg. And of course, there's a meme on the internet that says this is the corruption we've uncovered so far, and here's all the corruption we're going to uncover. Elon Musk has not gone after fiat. In fact, he's proposed further inflationary policies, including the Doge dividend, which will come out of our taxes or out of inflation. So and I've known for years that he is a socialist. He's floated the universal basic income theory before, which is just flat. It's unvarnished socialism, is what it is. So the writing is on the wall. Elon Musk is a socialist, and he's made no real sincere apology about that. He panders to the Republican base. We think we think that he's a capitalist, but that's not even remotely true. He claimed he was against subsidies. That's the cover story, but that's after he was enriched to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars by them, right? So that's it's a very hypocritical take. It's like, if I get hundreds of billions of dollars due to a business that gave me tons of government subsidies and gave me all that cheddar to make that happen, once I've got it made, of course I'm going to be like, oh, I don't think other people should get subsidies. I don't like subsidies anymore. Don't worry, I'm a capitalist, right? So it's completely dishonest. Elon Musk is a liar. And this is one of the issues I have with Doge, is it's a publicity stunt to get the people to trust him and Donald Trump, and to get them all outraged, which is, again, the exact same paradigm as Q. Q is a globalistic movement. Elon and Trump are both globalists. They are literally, and this is my huge concern here, by definition, they are national socialists, because they're both nationalists and they're socialists. And so all of the rhetoric on news media from the left saying, oh, you can't call them Nazis. And then on the right, they're like, oh, you can't call them a Nazi. That's a bad argument. And it's like, it's actually literally, they are national socialists, right? And so, and this is intentional. It's both parties working in tandem to create this narrative to lead the people of the United States onto destruction, and the people of the entire world. And that's why I take issue with Doge.
Yeah.
How do you
Great
think
point.
how do you substantiate the claim that Trump's a socialist? I feel like that's pretty.
Oh yeah, that's a piece of cake. I mean, so during the pandemic, okay, sorry, there were, even pre-pandemic, he issued stimulus checks during his last term in office. And I was saying, don't do it, Trump. Don't. I know you've got the rap as being a moderate Republican, which is basically just a way of saying it's a more left-leaning, wider tent, more inclusive thing. But he was dabbling with socialism, and then he went and just played the card. He
But
played the social
I
card.
mean, that was during a pandemic. I mean, what are you supposed to do during that? I feel like any
Not
president,
not
conservative.
steal from people, not try to engage in wealth redistribution schemes, whatever the argument, whatever the excuse. Elon's doing the exact same thing with the Doge dividend. Trump's floated the same thing. Trump has
Oh, I'm
advocated for
100% against
a
I'm 100% against the Doge dividend.
right,
100%.
right. But they're the same kind of thing. It's just a different excuse. And there are tons of reasons why this is catastrophic. And we could probably dive more into this in the financial version of this, which I'm hoping to do on Thursday. Maybe I'll do judicial one on Thursday and then financial one next Tuesday. But of this discussion. But in a nutshell, yeah, you by their fruits you shall know them. And
I think that's fair.
Donald Trump he's floated having the sovereign wealth fund thing. He has threatened to put a whole bunch of tax dollars into cryptocurrency, notably Bitcoin, which is a speculated asset. Crypto is a pyramid scheme. People literally do profit from other people signing up for it, and then they do their short sells and stuff, and they get money for free from poor people because they're gullible. Anyway, it's basically insider trading because Trump gets to dictate headlines, which has a real influence on moving the needle with crypto prices and stuff. Plus, he's threatening to use taxpayer dollars to do it. And I'm just like, okay, yes, he's admitted 100% he is a socialist. And so I don't take that lightly. I've been sounding the alarm about socialism for years. I mean, Social Security is a form of socialism, Medicare and Medicaid, and we've been discussing those. Those are all socialistic programs. They're not authorized under the Constitution. If you go back to income tax, yes, that's a form of socialism too, because the federal government's been extorting the states. Christopher Hansen on the other version of this, the other edition of this was talking that up too. Anyways, really great stuff to be aware of, but we've just gotten so used to it. This is the problem. We got so used to it that we no longer thought it was a threat. And now it's just coming at us. It's if you look at Elder Bednar's talk about the cheetahs, watchful unto prayer continually, he actually showed us the dangers of the two-party system. He exposed the party system. Because this last election, all the Republicans were like, oh no, Kamala Harris, she can't be president. Don't let her be president. That's a terrible choice. Vote for Trump. And Kamala Harris and the whole woke thing, like, that was the cheetah, if you remember from the talk. One cheetah like sticks his head up above the grass, and the other one is creeping forward below the grass where you can't see him. And so everyone's attention is on the cheetah that's sticking up out of the grass. And we're not paying attention to the other cheetah. So my question is always, where's the other cheetah? And in this case, where's the other cheetah? Well, it's this socialist Elon and this socialist Trump that are sprinting at you and about to pounce. I know that sounds like alarmism, but it's literally socialism, and it's also nationalism. It's literally National Socialism, which is Nazism. So, like, that's where we're at.
Great point. I pretty much agree.
I can't say I agree, but I appreciate the perspective.
There's a lot more beneath the tip of this iceberg too. Just to be clear about that. That's why I'm concerned. I didn't. So many people. I've had people block and unfriend me. People who are Republican. They're like, "Oh, you're a flaming liberal libtard" and stuff like that. And I'm like, guys, I've only been like exposing the blue shifting in our election system over the past year or so, and I've been, I'm
not going to call you that.
I've been the most strict constitutionalist I've ever met, probably. But
no, and I critique Trump daily too. He's not a true conservative, that's for sure.
Not by a long shot. No.
I agree with that.
And if you stick around for Thursday's discussion, I hope to do a little bit deeper of a dive on how he is threatening to replace, impeach, and replace these so-called activist judges, which would actually put the entire government, all three branches, under the control of a single party, which you can see how that might be problematic as far as a checks and balances perspective. But just one more little note about Doge, and maybe you can move on to the next question. But another thing about it is my father used to work in the Department of Defense, and whatever person's position in the organization, if a 5-line email to some unelected bureaucrat who's just a consultant, not even a government worker, if you don't send that out on a weekly basis or whenever if you don't jump when he says jump, and that can get you fired, that's a problem because, one, he is, factually speaking, objectively, that's a national security threat. The protocols for information safety, information handling, accountability, reporting, you report to your manager. You don't report to some guy even if the president says he's an okay guy, you actually have a statutory command and control structure, and so the president and Doge and Elon don't have authority to transgress those boundaries that were set up by law by the legislature. That's a violation of the separation of powers, and individuals in their capacity, even so-called bureaucrats in their offices and whatever they're doing, whether it's a translator or a field officer or whoever, they actually do have nullification power over corrupt edicts from their superiors, including the president, right? And that means, because they've each taken an oath of if it's an elected office and it's an oath of office, but they have an obligation to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So if you have a bad president who comes in, imagine it's Obama for a second, because I think there's consensus that Obama was a bad dude. It's Obama, and he's giving you some directive saying, do this, don't do that. You have every right to nullify that and to refuse to obey those orders if they're unconstitutional or immoral. In fact, you're obligated to. And so the notion that, Elon getting all these government workers fired and, just trimming down and consolidating these various bureaucracies and stuff under a single regime, the idea that that's not dangerous is a very, very naive and dangerous idea itself. Because it would effectively take all of the conscientious objectors out of your system in one fell swoop. And then you just have an entire bureaucracy filled with yes men, and every bad request from a president, hey, my son needs some cocaine, it will go unopposed, That's how you get that corruption installed in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that happened with the last White House, is because of the consolidation of power and the erasure of checks and balances within the organizations and between them. So anyways, let's go to the next question. This is gonna be fun. All right. If we're winding down, we could pause, but I think this is a fun question right here. Let's see. Am I sharing my screen now? I'm not. Oh. Let me jump. I'm sharing this one because I think it's a good question. I think it's pretty agreeable. All right. These are grueling, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to cry uncle, we can see for another one. Save some of these questions for another time. But question number 7, Proposition 7: the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints stands in the way of human trafficking. So that's the question. Do we believe that's true? Believe that's false?
I'm just going to come out and say, hey, I'm not going to say anything that will make me a group opposed to the church. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to come out and say, go ahead and say what you want to say. But,
well, no, I'm saying I don't want to. I'm saying
to.
True, because I'm going to say, yeah, it stands for good. The church stands for good. That's, I think, basically. I don't have much to say.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say. I mean, I could talk up the church a whole bunch. It's true, by going into its teachings and the lives of the members and so on. I would just say true. I mean, categorically, obviously true. If a person wanted to install a big child trafficking or human trafficking cabal, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would be one of its biggest obstacles, because we teach and we hold to, unflinching morals, the law of chastity, respect for other people's rights. And I'm not saying no one else out there believes in human rights, but if you want to find the one organization on earth that's been totally unflinching on this issue since day one, it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that's one of the reasons why the adversary has earmarked it and said, okay, I want this gone. Because you can't install a fully global and ubiquitous, human trafficking cabal. You can't enslave all mankind, to the point that was made earlier, that there are two forces in the world. I think it was Matthew made that point. There's the force of liberty and there's the force of captivity. Those are the two. That's the divide. The adversary wants to install captivity. He's got to destroy the church in order to do it. Anyways, yeah. And to your point, Scott, like before, all accountability is individual. If you find one case or 20 cases even, or whatever number of people who happen to be members of the church who've done something wrong in their lives or whatever, I mean, what's news, right? Oh, look,
Yeah.
Cain killed a man. He was a murderer. He was a child of Adam and Eve. Therefore, Adam and Eve, that organization, that institution of their family must have been so corrupt. So it's very important to avoid
Families
hasty
don't work.
generalizations. Families don't work, exactly. Yeah, one of those hasty generalizations. And we're very neurologically predisposed towards making hasty generalizations and making class labels on people, which is the whole basis of Marxism, which is one of the reasons why I warn people that a lot of Republicans are Marxists and don't even realize it because they've fallen for the classism mentality. But I digress. Any other thoughts? Trevor, you want to speak up on this a little bit? We'll go to the next
Yeah, I
one.
think DNC 121, like 30, 38 or something, where it's like, okay, when people use it to undertake their pride or vain ambitions, what they're calling, that's bad. But the church as a whole stands for good. And I think sometimes it also relies on us to, like, the church encourages us to vote, and I think a big point of that is like also like to help our communities, like whether like even our non-church communities just help out. And I think that's activism in the community is like a good way of helping our community, and like because our church only does so much, and so we need to also help it, help better things also where we can see a way to help.
Yeah,
We don't
absolutely.
need to rely on it for everything.
Yeah, we need to do our part. Trevor, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm trying to be generous yet objective at the same time. Obviously, I love the church and everything. I think it stands in the way of human trafficking in the sense of as members, you know, grow in morals, grow up in a moral environment, then it, prevents more people from engaging in any type of immoral acts, whether it be human trafficking or not. Um, I guess my question would be, what are we, what are we actively doing as a church, um, to actually oppose this? Are we donating money to organizations that, oppose this, that investigate this? That I don't know that. That would be
I
my
don't think there is either. I agree with you. I don't know if there is either. Maybe there is, but I think maybe just betterment of people. Like, when we bring
yeah,
people out of the, like, when people are bettered, they're taken out of, it's an old talk, but like taken out of the ghetto or taken out of,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, I'm butchering it. It's not that. It was much better way of saying it, but
Right. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. It's I think that's is it Ezra Taft Benson quotes. It says you take the slums out of people and then they take themselves out of slums and
yeah, something like that, or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that. And I would submit, I'll just throw out a caution here, because I think it's typical, especially in Utah, for people just to assume, oh, this is the church's headquarters. Most people here are active members of the church, right? And therefore, what could go wrong? That's not even true anymore. I think it's not even active plus inactive that are even a majority in Utah anymore. And even there, it's like we shouldn't assume that just because the institution of the church exists geographically within some region, has a presence or whatever, that it is therefore immune to the evils of degenerate society. I mean, among other things, this is one of the reasons why the prophets will regularly from the pulpit preach against the evils of pornography, urge people to be chaste, urge them to qualify for the companionship of the Holy Ghost and attend the Lord's house regularly so that we can have more of heaven rub off onto us and just be more Christ-like people who stand up for what's right. And frankly, that's the difference maker. I believe the difference maker isn't just the ecclesiastical presence or absence of the church organization. I believe the difference maker is the people who have the gift and constant companionship of the Holy Ghost and exercise it. If you wanted to find somebody who is as adept as possible at discerning the signs of people being abused and manipulated and criminality happening, I would want somebody who has the gift of the Holy Ghost. That's who I'd want to have in the grand juries, for example, investigating and prosecuting these cases against corrupt government officials and other criminals. But so take nothing for granted. Don't assume it's automatic. And the Lord did say to Joseph Smith that even he had a hard time telling friend from foe sometimes. And so yeah, we can be infiltrated. We can have neighbors who are doing bad stuff and not even realize it. So I'm not saying that to be conspiratorial to make us all suspicious, but just of the fact that like our chances are improved when people live God's commandments and they have access to His gifts and use them and don't get complacent. That's what I would submit is one of the biggest difference makers here. And so, what the devil really wants to do is he wants to eliminate these gifts.
All right, I'm going to have to drop off now.
Okay.
It's about midnight where I'm at, so
Sorry. Okay.
no
Well,
problem.
probably
I'm
wrap
2
up
hours
here in a
ahead of
minute.
you, so
Okay.
all right, I'm just going to drop off and let you guys continue, I guess.
Okay. Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate you.
Thanks,
All
Scott.
right, have
That's
a
great
good one.
insights. You too.
Thank you.
All righty. Yeah, I think we need to get rest here too. I forgot which time zone you're in. Are you in Mountain Time, Trevor?
Yeah, I'm in Arizona, so we're the same as
Okay,
Utah
gotcha.
right now.
Again, yeah. There's a little bit of difference. Part of the year, right?
Yeah, it depends on the year, it's that time of year because Arizona never changes, and so sometimes we're in line with Utah, sometimes we're in line with California. So
That's fair. Yeah, I'll be honest too. Like I've got a battery of some additional questions. If you're feeling punchy and like you want to just like do some rapid fire stuff, maybe a little bit faster than we've been doing it.
yeah,
I'm
sure.
okay
Give
with
me like
that.
2 seconds. I just drank a lot of water, so I gotta go to the bathroom real quick, and
Okay,
then yeah, let's do it.
sounds good. All right, super. I'll pull up the next one. All right, for anyone watching, I don't have any merch. I'm not that cool. I'm not that well established in this business. Um, but if you do want to go and check out the origins and solution of the partisan delusion, namely, why is it that people are so contentious on the basis of their political parties, I recommend that you check out constitutionalvote.org. Have a, in fact, let me go ahead and share a screen on that for just a second. Let's see. So yeah, constitutionalvote.org. It's a website I created to address the problem of partisan division and contention. Sorry, I'm trying to find the screen right here. There we go. I've got way too many tabs, guys. All right. Try to share this for just a second. Oh, he's back already. But yeah.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, no worries. I was just gonna in the intermission, if you were gone for more than another minute, I was gonna
Yeah, sorry about that. Let's go ahead.
share my website, Constitutional Vote. Have you checked it out, by the way, Trevor?
No, what is it?
Okay. Let me go ahead and share it since I'm already most of the way there. I was just fiddling around with the screen share here. There it is, finally. Yeah, constitutionalvote.org. So it's this
That's
website.
pretty good. Wow, that's a pretty good domain name. Well done.
I like it, but nobody goes looking for it almost because almost nobody is aware of the fact that the way we vote is not consistent with the Constitution, even in its amended form. And this website is, right now, it's mainly about the 12th Amendment, which is what gave us the two-party system, because it turns out that it's basically just math, right? It's the way that people vote and the way that the votes are counted, which is why there's this quote from Joseph Stalin on here saying, I don't care how people vote or who votes, but what matters is who will count the votes and how. So you could have the exact same ballot and you could vote in such a way that eliminates the spoiler effect from third parties, so that third parties are actually viable, or you could use that same ballot and vote in such a way that the spoiler effect is in play and third parties don't have a chance. And that's what creates the hyper-contentious two-party system with all of its false dichotomies that we have today. And the Constitution originally prevented that. And anyways, there have been some other YouTubers out there who have gone over this. It's a form of what's called approval voting. CGP Grey has a really quick video on it. He's not a big fan of it necessarily for like voting in government, but it is like literally the simplest form of voting out there. I don't have the graphics for this yet, but like simplest way I would teach it to people is just to say approval voting is check boxes, and plurality voting or first past the post is what we use today is just radio buttons where you can only select one. And that only select one thing is what creates the hyper contentious aspect of it, because your second place vote could be like really close to your first place vote and still be treated exactly the same as though it were the absolute worst candidate. Mm-hmm. So that's what causes the problem. Originally under the Constitution, you could vote for two. Yeah, under this one.
Ranked choice. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Huh.
So yeah, so it's not ranked choice voting. It's like almost polar opposite of ranked choice voting in some sense, because it's more of a rated rather than a ranked method. And Veritasium also has a video that he did on this last August, I think it was. I should update my site to have that too. But vote by ballot for two persons. And anyways, it would add checks and balances back to our government and eliminate a ton of the contention because we would not be dominated by the two-party system. So that's my little plug for the website, constitutionalvote.org. Let me go back to the questions. We'll have a little bit of fun and then we'll wrap up. Who knew that answering questions would be fun? It's almost like we have some Stockholm syndrome for our school days, right? We're sick and tired of not being quizzed. We need our daily quiz energy. We need to be tested. All right. So, question number 8, proposition 8, whatever. Constitutional protections can be faked if the people are not discerning. And if the answer is yes, then share examples. So what do you think? Is that true or is that not true?
I think it's true. I'm not knowledgeable enough to provide examples.
Okay. I'll jump in and just say, yeah, it's definitely true. I'll share an example, I guess, from the website we were just at, and that is with the Electoral College. So there's the Schoolhouse Rock video. It's like, we'll count the popular votes, and then the delegates will pledge their vote to mirror that, and the Electoral College will work the way our founders meant and stuff. That is a complete lie. So the Electoral College propaganda that they taught you in government schools is just a complete lie. And some people will say, well, yeah, because I see your point, maybe because the Electoral College isn't mentioned as such in the Constitution. I'm like, no, it goes way beyond that. Is the fact that they're binding delegates. They bind the electors. Most of the states and the state parties bind their electors in the Electoral College, which forces them to mirror a popular vote, which means it is a democratic election rather than a Republican one, which is another manifestation of the same problem that we've had at the state level in my state.
Wait. You're saying the electors, because the electors don't get because the electors are the ones that are supposed to vote, right?
Yes.
So you're saying that if you don't give them that power, then there's no point? Is that what you're saying?
If you don't give them the power to vote, then by definition, they're not electors. They're just puppets.
So in theory, how would that look different in the ideal world? Because, so let's just say, for example, I live in Arizona. Okay, so if I vote for Republican president, right, or like our country, or like our state wins Republican, but our electors conflict with that, how would that look?
Yeah. So if I don't know what Arizona's laws are specifically. You can look up the map, but yeah, in my state they're allocated by the popular vote, which is why we even care. This, by the way, part of the reason why I got started on this is because I was doing a series on my Facebook page, Utah Liberty Forum, to just expose the process of why there was election fraud in 2020. I was trying to analyze that and say, why is there election fraud? Why are there ballots full of ballots? If you actually stuck to the Constitution, that would never happen in a presidential election. It could not happen because there's no such thing as a popular vote in a presidential election. because the states are supposed to choose. The state legislature decides the manner of choosing their electors, their delegates, and then they use whatever process that is, and then those delegates go in and they go and vote for the president and the vice president.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying. So you're saying we like it's democratic. So if I understand you properly, what you're saying is you vote for your state representatives,
Yep.
and then your state representatives vote for the president.
Yeah. Or whatever method your legislature decides.
So there would never under your premise, there would never be elections at all, really, except for state elections. And maybe for the congressman, right?
Okay, so presidential, there would be elections. Like, I go over this in several of my other videos, and I really love the topic, honestly. So it's kind of hard to get me to shut up once you bring it up. But originally under the Constitution, there were at least 3 different election methods, right? And I call them the red, white, and blue. And let me just start with the blue. The blue is a direct popular vote. That was for members of the House of Representatives.
Right.
That's a direct democratic vote. So it was an actual popular vote. And that's that's what decides. But that's at the state level. And so it's still a lot smaller than national popular vote. But you would have somebody elected in that way to go to the House of Representatives. And then your senators would actually be elected through, I call the white method, the legislative method. The legislature would get together and they would vote for your state senator to represent you in the national Congress. And the state senators would often be elected similarly within the state. But the idea being is that that's kind of a doubly removed Republican method. And let me get to the one in the middle, which is the red method. The Republican method is an indirect vote. The caucus convention, I don't know if you have a caucus in Nevada. Sorry, not Nevada, Arizona. But that's where we show up and we vote for neighbors to go and represent us to the convention. So we have caucus followed by convention. And we actually go and elect our delegates, and the delegates go and vet people for the candidates for public office, and then they go and vote for them in the nominating convention. That's a partisan nomination, but it does echo what the indirect elections for state governor races, for example, used to look like. Is you would just have a nonpartisan neighborhood meeting. You'd go say, hey, I think Trevor is great to represent us. Trevor, you want to, you'd give yourself a little pitch. You'd advertise your candidacy that you were running as a delegate, and the people would vote. And if they selected you, then you would go and vote in this convention. And this is great because you actually have a lot of opportunities to meet and vet the candidates that a lot of the people just don't. It's not feasible for the people to go and, all the voters go to these mass meetings and each one of them get to shake the hand and, ask questions and get them answered. I used to badger John Curtis a ton. He's now our senator and he's a very wicked man. That's what I found out by my experience as a delegate, getting to ask him quite a number of my own questions. Anyways, sorry. I know him better than I want to because I went to all those events. So I found out what a slimeball he was. Sorry, I'm not here to call names or anything. But just by their fruits you shall know them. I'm sorry, I don't want to call names. But you can really, there are people that show up on your general election ballot that you would never dream of voting if you actually knew who they were. And the delegates have a much better chance of knowing who they are because they get to spend actual time with them, asking them questions and stuff. Sorry if I'm going off on this too long, but the Republican method, I call it Republican with a lowercase r, indirect method. Anyways, I'm probably not being as effective here. I go over it in some of my other videos, just explaining these methods and how they're different. But all this to say, in a nutshell, that what the modern electoral college does is it takes those red votes, Republican votes, because the electoral college is an indirect Republican method, and it turns them blue by binding them to the direct popular vote, which is a blue Democratic method. And so that is one of the major fakes out there. Because
how does it turn them blue? Because the electoral college actually favors Republicans.
Well, okay, so let's take a step back. Here's part of the deception. The Republican and the Democrat parties are completely fake and they're completely unconstitutional. You could have a private organization that's called the Democrat Party, or the Republican Party or whatever, and people can choose to affiliate or not. But if that party gets to steal your representative power and get a preferential route to the ballot, which they do, then you're kind of beholden to them. You have basically Stockholm syndrome to them. So Republican with an uppercase R is not the same thing as Republican with a lowercase r. An indirect election is by definition a Republican election. A direct method of a popular vote, that's by definition a Democratic method, right? And so how the Electoral College, the modern fake one, turns red votes blue is because it's supposed to be that these electors can just go and vote for whoever they think is actually the best candidate for president and vice president. But they are being bound. They're not even allowed to vote their conscience. So their vote doesn't even mean anything. They don't have a vote. It's kind of like you show up to your polling location and there's this guy and an elephant, like this elephant, I don't know, whatever, there, and he's like, well, you're a member of the Republican Party, right? I'm like, yeah. Well then, go ahead and fill out your ballot, and I'll check over it. And if you checked Republican on everything, then I'll go ahead and submit your ballot for you. And if you didn't, I'm going to tear it up and kick you out, and maybe even fine you. They have fines for these guys, by the way. You get fined $1,000 if you don't vote for the presidential candidate your party told you to. Anyways, so it's literally Satan's plan being enacted through our fake electoral college. You bind an elector, that's captivity. It's not real election. It's not real freedom. And they turn the red votes blue, which is why every president who's been elected for the last 150 plus years is a Democrat, lowercase d. They're all, it's an all blue uniparty. Everybody in government, frankly, have belonged to this all Democrat uniparty practically since, well, at least since 17th Amendment, was that 1913? I could be misremembering there. But it's been more than 100 years that all of our elections have just been like blue, all blue. Anyways, and anyway, so that's one deception. And another I would submit just briefly is heads up on the Q movement. Part of their playbook is that they have a whole bunch of sealed grand jury indictments. And my issue with that is, okay, yeah, you could have some honest citizens assembled in a grand jury. Problem is the institution of the grand jury has been under attack for so long, it's been controlled, and there are a lot of gatekeepers in the judiciary and among the executive branch, the prosecutors. They'll give instructions to grand juries and say they are only allowed to do certain things a certain way and so on. So you can have a grand jury institution or even a trial jury. They did this back with the polygamy trials with the church. This is one of the things that it proved. You could have a trial by jury that wasn't a bona fide constitutional jury because they had them take these jury oaths, which they had to swear that I'm not a practicing member of the church. I don't believe in the doctrine of polygamy. I hate it. And they'd have to sign this affidavit that says this oath that says that's the case, right? And that was their screening process for jurors. And the brethren of the church called that out, said, that's not an impartial jury of our peers. That's a panel of our sworn enemies. That's a very, very different process with a very, very different outcome. So our government can have the appearance of these things, but still not actually be granting us our rights because they're binding it in some way. And that binding everywhere. If they're binding people's conscience, if they're binding them, if they say, here are your jury instructions, you must convict according to the law, that's a lie. That was never a stipulation for juries. Juries have the power to nullify bad laws. Anyways, lots of things like that where they could just lie to you and steal your rights because you don't know what they are or because they think they can get away with it. Anyways, I've been trying to raise the alarms on this issue for years, on the jury trial issue. But yeah, that's a big fake one, and the Q movement and Donald Trump are fixing to capitalize on it. In the disguise of giving our rights back. But the reality is, you and me, all these ordinary Joes, we could have gone and assembled a grand jury and just, formed a presentment against any of these corrupt members of Congress and ousted them. No need for Doge, no need for any of that garbage. We could have the Federal Reserve. We could have it tomorrow. maybe not tomorrow. Take some time to perform the investigations, issue the presentment, have the trial. But you could actually remove from office all of the corrupt people without needing an impeachment, even because if they're convicted of a crime, they're thrown in the slammer. Obviously, they're voting and they have to be replaced. So that's a impeachment is Congress deciding they want somebody removed from office, but people can actually do it too. That's been hidden from us for centuries. We actually have the jury, the grand jury and jury respectively are referred to as the sword and the shield of the American people. Anyways, really great book by Suja Thomas on that subject called The Missing American Jury, if you have interest. I should probably do an entire, I've been meaning actually to do a whole thing on jury trials, but I've a video devoted to that subject itself. But it's honestly hard to find enough people who have interest in the topic, like who know what it even is. Like, what's the jury trial? I've seen it on television before, but why does it concern me? And I'm like, well, that's because it's one of the things the government stole from us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know much about it. Yeah. So a grand jury, I mean, I sound so ignorant, but like, tell me about a grand jury. Is that just like a huge, like, does it to a huge federal court with a huge, massive jury appear? I mean, how does that work?
So the reason why it's called the grand jury is because it traditionally consists of more members than the petite jury, which is the trial jury. Trial jury is 12 people. A grand jury varies by statute. It's usually somewhere between 16 and 23 people. And their role, I'll give you an analogy that's relatable, and that is impeachment. The House of Representatives is supposed to issue the impeachment towards any public official, right? And the Senate is supposed to try the impeachment. The House of Representatives is the larger body, Senate is a smaller body, right? And so that's analogous to the role of the citizen grand jury. The grand jury's role is to decide, is to investigate and decide, yep, there's enough information, there's enough evidence to for it to be highly probable that this person did indeed commit such and such a crime, so we're going to formally accuse that person of doing that, which is done either through an indictment or a presentment, and then that person has to stand trial for it. That's in the Fifth Amendment. And yeah, so it's a great blessing because we the people actually do have the power to initiate investigations and file formal accusations against corrupt officials in our own government.
Cool.
So if we had any suspicions at all that, hey, there's some monkey business going on with this USAID thing. Hey, that, Clinton Foundation thing, there's the Bill Clinton impeachment, but he wasn't removed from office. We the people could still be like, you know what? There's still plenty of evidence he committed this crime or that crime or whatever. We could go assemble a grand jury, go and based on their findings, they say, yeah, we believe there's probable cause here. Have a trial. You get removed from office. So that's one way we can actually, any public official can be removed through such a proceeding, because obviously somebody who's serving a sentence can't be in Congress at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But practically nobody knows this, and this is one of the reasons why I'm like, guys, wake up! Like, the reason why Doge appears necessary is because the citizen watchdogs have been asleep for a long time, and our own government has for centuries conspired to put the watchdogs to sleep. But when Isaiah says restoring their judges, and it's also in a line in a song, so all as at first,
Yeah.
That's describing the return of grand juries and trial juries. Because we the people are supposed to be the ultimate guardians of freedom and justice and the ultimate check and balance on our own government. Anyway, Suja Thomas, in her book, she's a law professor at University of Illinois, book is called The Missing American Jury. It's really great. And she goes into the history of this and how it's been erased over time. Bound, as it were. But yeah, she regarded it as the fourth branch of government, and I believe that's entirely accurate. Standing institution is supposed to be acting as a watchdog. If anybody in government decides that socialism sounds like a great idea, as watchdog could just be like, you know what? That's unconstitutional. Let's have a trial. Boom. Problem solved. I feel like we need a discussion on this one. We need to do juries. If you want to do that next Wednesday, or next Tuesday, I'm down. Or whichever day.
That's good.
So yeah, there have been a lot of fakes out there. Let's go to number 9. We need a more powerful government to prevent and prosecute human trafficking.
You got my opinion?
Mm-hmm.
False.
Okay. Yeah, my take is false also. False, but also true. Slightly more true. But, well.
Government's already powerful enough. I don't think it's an issue of power.
Okay. Yeah. If we could put it this way, if the people in government wanted to stop human trafficking, they could. For the very most part. Like sealing the border, shutting down pornography and all the facilities where they know this is happening because of their own espionage. I'll use what I refer to as the Google argument. It's going to get a little bit nasty because I have worked at Google before, and I love the people who work there. I love the company, frankly. But here's what I refer to as the Google phenomenon, or the search engine phenomenon, is that everything in the underworld has portals to it in the overworld. There are things in plain sight that take people to really nasty destinations. And if you are a search engine or a social media platform, so this is also the Mark Zuckerberg problem, the Facebook problem, the Twitter problem, whatever, any place where people can just go and type in the wishes, the desires of their hearts, and have this machine navigate them to the object of their desires, guess what? The people who routed them there know how they got there.
Yeah.
It's particularly true of, say, internet service providers, which have all the different servers, their IP addresses, and the hops, and they know what it took to get to such and such dark web website that's, trafficking, pornography, you name it, drugs. Like, they know how you get there, and so with exceptions being like, oh, there's this like anonymous server that's dealing with encrypted communications and we don't know what it is. So there are exceptions, right? There are exceptions to the rule that the ISP or the search engine knows how you got there, but like a huge number of people will just literally go onto Google and be like, I want porn, I want this, I want that, right? And Google serves it up. Why? Because it's part of their business model.
Right.
They profit from it.
Sure.
So anyways, reason why this is relevant to the government as well, there's the corporate argument behind it, but then the government with all their espionage facilities, it's like, yeah, guys, we already know the Patriot Act is real. We already know like Patriot Act 2.0 or probably 3.0 has probably been implemented against us. They're collecting tons of information on us, and so like if they actually wanted to stop this, yeah, they have their raids, their busts, and everything. And part of the argument, I've heard this from law enforcement officials, is like, yeah, our hands are tied because of regulatory whatever or orders from higher ups or whatnot. So yeah, there are shenanigans like that, and there are checks and balances against bad laws as well as against good laws in that sense. Anyways, I don't want to dwell on this one too long, but I would just say, no, we don't need a bigger government. The one way in which we need a more powerful government is actually we would have a more powerful government with respect to prosecuting and preventing crime if we reinstated grand juries. That would actually give us that power. But the problem is the people in our government have just been complacent, not even just complacent, they've been complicit for so long. They're actively working against us in many areas. It's very clearly a matter of they're not doing it because they don't want to, not because they don't have the power to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky, some of the stuff though, because then you get into freedom of speech stuff, and then you get into, yeah, it's tricky.
Well, I won't pretend that it's too tricky with like pornography because I don't think that's protected speech. I don't believe anything that has a criminal tendency among people is actually protected speech. The First Amendment is.
It depends. From what I've heard, I mean, yeah, it's really bad. Like with I saw something on, I don't know if it's Instagram or something like that, where I guess some of the abuse is like it's really awful, and it like from what I heard, like one of the major porn distributors or something like that was like for something to be really bad, it had to be flagged like 15 times, and they only had one person that was looking at all the flags, and they were backlogged with so many different things, and so there should probably be some type of regulation in place that requires like for starters, at least for starters, like it requires a certain number of people from those organizations to look into that, at least the abusive cases, you know what I'm saying? So
Here's what I would submit there is if we were to privatize more of the internet service providers and so on, you could run your own, self-hosted, you know, data service, your own internet service provider network or whatever, and you could just categorically ban. You could have a policy as a company saying we filter our content. We don't want this garbage on our content,
right.
on our platform. We don't want to serve this up to people, and we're just going to refuse to do it. You'd have full power to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, it's kind of like the whole like two things can be true at the same time, right? For example, drinking alcohol is bad, but we saw from experience that prohibition is also bad, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Like pornography is bad. At the same time, restricting it can also cause some downstream effects that are not good, right? So it's like that's more of like but like at least the criminal things, you got to take an incremental approach here. If you want to ban it entirely, maybe that's a goal to work towards, but going point blank to that would be pretty, so that would be a big shift for society. you know?
Well, and I fully subscribe, honestly, to the idea that prohibition was a good thing. I think there's abundant evidence for that. We've just been told otherwise in government schools, and that's the only reason why we.
Oh, so you're for prohibition?
100%. I mean, the prophets were.
Uh,
If you want a gold nugget here, go back into the general conferences. This is one of the first broadcasts that was done by radio. So one of the first audio recorded general conferences, and they go on and the prophet just says the reason why the Great Depression happened was because the people did not keep the word of wisdom.
because the people did not what?
Did not keep the word of wisdom.
Oh, what's the reasoning there?
You can go through and listen to the talk. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's plain as print. The writing's on the wall. If you
Okay.
want to understand anything in history, anything in current events, look to the prophets. Like this is the best way of understanding history. I would not dare to teach my kids a history class from our government school textbooks.
Hmm.
I'm going to take them to the prophets because the prophets have nailed it every single time, and they always will. They always do.
Hmm.
So, anyways, it's really fascinating too if you look at the Q conspiracy theory and psyop, like the timing of the prophets and the apostles' messages on various topics about warning about the dangers of social media and internet rabbit holes and stuff. Like it's spot on because this is one of the biggest delusions that people are under. I unfortunately underestimated the prevalence of this. I thought people would be smarter than this. I bought into like the main claim of the Q thing of all this trafficking that's happening. But what's sketchy is the therefore. Therefore, you need to trust us. Therefore, you need to sit back and let us be globalists. And I'm like, nope, that ain't happening. And what flipped the switch for me in particular was Ezra Taft Benson prophesying the Constitution will not be saved in Washington. And this is true regardless of if you believe in the Q thing or not, if you believe that's connected to Trump or not. We know the Constitution will not be saved in Washington. And so everybody who's looking to Washington and say, oh, Trump's so great, he's restoring the Constitution. I'm like, name one right. Name one constitutional protection, one guarantee, one check, or one balance he's actually restoring.
Yeah.
Oh, but they're making the government smaller. I'm like, Hitler made the government smaller. Night of the Long Knives. I mean, he assassinated his political opponents. That made the government smaller, right? But the thing is, when you erase checks and balances, yeah, your government gets smaller and lighter, and then it balloons because there's nothing to stop it. And this is a very legitimate concern with Doge and Trump, and we actually see them doing this before our very eyes. What are the checks and balances? We need to understand how checks and balances actually operate. We're accustomed to parties playing the charade, but they're on the same team. And now they're pushing the donkey under the bus. That's a chess move. They're sacrificing a piece because it puts us at checkmate. Anyways, I wish I had like the biggest megaphone in the whole world to just go and shout this to people, and had that years ago so that, you know, people could actually pay
you're
attention
an
to this.
angel, right?
That is exactly how I feel, and that is exactly why I have this channel.
There you go.
So, but yeah, and we need amplifiers for that, and people who go and learn for themselves and go and examine whether these things are so, because that's the most powerful check on government, is people who actually question the narrative, including the alternative narrative. Because, oh, I know my conspiracy theory is correct because I didn't get it from mainstream media. I got it from alternative mainstream media.
Yeah.
You know? I jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire, and that means I'm smarter than you guys, and I can school you on anything. And I'm like, okay, guys.
Because Fox isn't mainstream, right?
Yeah, well, both the parties are mainstream. It's the Hegelian dialectic. Sorry,
both parties. Would say both parties are what?
Both parties are mainstream.
Oh yeah, no, I was just teasing, like, oh, I didn't get it from mainstream media. I got it from Fox.
It's like, what's the difference? There isn't one. It's just the partisan spin. It's just the demographic that they're tailoring their lies to. Anyways, and it's not true that everything that's on any of those platforms is false. They say a lot of things that are true. I've seen this maneuver. I want to document this one a lot better. But this particular maneuver, they actually have a Democrat go and say something that's true about the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. And then they'll do that just so that Republicans develop a neurological aversion to the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. Think, oh, that's a bad thing. Because AOC said it, right? I've seen that exact thing. Anyways, let's go ahead, and I think I need to reshare my screen and go to the next.
Who's your favorite? Who's been like your favorite president or just representative in general?
In all of human history?
Yeah.
In all of the, I'll limit myself to the United States. My favorite presidential candidate is Joseph Smith.
Okay.
That's my hill, and I am dying.
I mean, actually elected
representative. Sorry, what?
Actually elected representative, I mean.
You give me such slim pickings, man.
I know.
Oh, that's easy, actually. For the entirety of United States history, George Washington, hands down.
Oh, okay. Not Lincoln.
He was the only nonpartisan president. Lincoln, I do have a high opinion of, honestly. There are some people who say he was a really bad dude, and I'm just like, I'm not fully convinced. I do see what he had to work with in terms of party. That was when the Republican National Party began. It was with Lincoln. He didn't start it, but he had to. That was the political movement that he had to pander to, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Question number 10. Proposition 10. People are powerless to stop human trafficking.
False.
I agree. It's false.
It feels that way sometimes. Let's address the elephant in the room. It feels that way sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the that's a huge part of the reason why people take to social media to go and do all their keyboard warrior stuff and feel like they're doing a good deed by concurring with Elon Musk in his chat feed and be like, yeah, treason, kill him, give him the death penalty, blah, blah, blah. And they just feel like they're doing a great service to humankind by going and drinking in all of these conspiracy theories and being like, see, I'm tough on crime, I'm tough on these predators. And it's like,
sure.
Actually, that's one of the most toxic influences in the entire world, and I can show you why that's actually extremely toxic. That's far more toxic to human rights than arguably the existing. I will say this confidently. That is far more toxic to human rights than the entire existing human trafficking problem in the world right now combined.
Whoa, that's a bold statement.
It's a bold statement. It's justified and it's true. I'll dive into that. So as an example, I'll just share a little bit of the background. So in my experience as a delegate so far, I've been to numerous events. I've been able to go to like debates with county attorney candidates and candidates for the sheriff's office. And that's where a lot of this went down in Utah. Because, well, among other things, this was after the fact of the convention where we nominated our guys, but the right before the general election, the incumbent county attorney candidate was publicly and openly accused by the sheriff of, well, he said there was an ongoing investigation, rather. That's the way he phrased it. An ongoing investigation into, let's see if I can remember all the sordid details. Something to do with sex trafficking and cannibalism. Like, he's part of a cannibalistic death cult or something like that, and he's trafficking kids for sex. And I'm just like, wow, those are pretty steep allegations. And it's been 2 years, and was that politicized? Was that weaponized? It's just as an allegation? Because
Right.
what's come of that? It's been 2 years, guys. Anyways, so yes, prima facie evidence that was politicized, that was weaponized. But who knows whether it's true or not? But the whole thing I've seen is that the Republicans themselves, including the delegates, are like, oh yeah, let's be tough on crime. Let's go prosecute. Let's be efficient at prosecuting. They wanted enhancements on crimes. They wanted all this stuff. They want to have extra programs for penalizing offenders and repeat offenders and stuff like that. And so they want to really weaponize this whole prosecution thing. And throughout this whole time, like, the spirit just left the room. That's one of the most express ways I can communicate this, is the spirit just left. Because what happened when I heard this crowd, they became a mob. Because they were angry about something. They were angry about this topic of, oh, there are people who are like harming kids, mutilating them, trafficking them, etc., treating them as sex objects. And I'm just like, yes, that's infuriating. Don't get me wrong. Like, anybody who does that's going down.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord's been express about that. The prophets are express about that. But what's super dangerous here is the fact that in all of this, nobody's wondering, well, wait a minute, what about defendant rights? What about the Bill of Rights? If our sole objective is go and get revenge, go and hate these people, go seek mob justice, you realize that's what these government employees are actually out there actively doing. I recently attended a Utah County Republican Women's Organization thing. Men were invited to, but it was mainly these women there, and the sheriff is there, and he's just there to talk about this child trafficking cabal, and just fear-mongering, and just filling their heads with all this, and saying, yeah, it's the illegal immigrants, it's da-da-da-da, and it's a big thing here in Utah. And just like, okay, bro, like, let's assume that all of that's true. What good is that doing? What outcome are you hoping for? He's hoping to get a whole bunch of people riled up about this, the people who are most emotionally vulnerable, people with the mama bear instinct, and what does our government want them to do? I went immediately afterwards up to the Capitol building where they were having the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, and they were having this hearing on a bill to apply enhancements to ritual abuse cases. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I agree that ritual abuse is bad, but does that mean we need to violate the Eighth Amendment?
Right.
Like, I agree that these things are bad, and because there were a whole bunch of women there who were testifying and they'd been maltreated and stuff, and I'm like, yes, I agree that's bad. Are we making things any better by insisting that we violate defendant rights? Because the argument is, well, we've been harmed, or someone else has been harmed, and therefore we need to escalate harm that we inflict on others.
Right.
Our emotions are being weaponized. This is exactly what Elon Musk's platform X is doing right now with the entire population. saying amplify your anger, minimize your independent information and thoughtfulness. Just parrot what we tell you to, like, get outraged when we tell you to get outraged. It's an absolute mob. It's a rally, and that's not an appropriate way to conduct justice. If there's somebody who did some horrible thing, you have them investigated by a grand jury, you have them indicted or have it presented, and then you have them tried by a jury that actually hears the first-hand witnesses, not some rumor that was promulgated on X or CNN or MSNBC or wherever, or in your neighborhood. It's people who are actually there hearing the first-hand witnesses and can evaluate it, and then they deliberate and they make their decision. Like, we shouldn't be outsourcing justice to a mob, because then we completely lose sight of the Bill of Rights. So this is going to sound really cynical, but you better watch out for this, is that the Bill of Rights has been very, very under attack. And most Republicans don't even have a clue what it is anymore. They think they know because they heard about it in school, and they have a copy of it, they have a little pamphlet, and they're like, oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, First Amendment, right? Freedom of the press, freedom of speech. There we go. Oh yeah, gun rights. And then their eyes just glaze over once they hit the, no soldiers shall be quartered in your houses, and okay, that's just colonial America stuff. We don't need to worry about that. That's all antiquated. Oh yeah, and states' rights towards the end. And they just completely forget. Wait a minute. The trial of all crimes shall be by jury. Civil case, $20 or more, you have the right to a jury. Oh yeah, counsel for the assistance of the accused. Oh yeah, witnesses for the accused. Oh yeah, no, you remember due process. No, you can't do anything to the people without due process, even if he's the worst criminal ever, and so on. What I would submit is that the Bill of Rights, in a nutshell, especially defendant rights, this is how we love our enemies, like Jesus said. You grant them their rights as a defendant. Is that so hard? If we really want justice in these cases with some big bad dude who's done some horrible things to kids or whatever, it's like, okay, uphold his defendant rights. Instead of asking for summary judgment and have him deported to Guantanamo or whatever, Yeah. with enhancements. It's like, anyways, we should probably wrap up for today, because I feel like I'm keeping up too late.
Yeah, it's all good. It's fun. But yeah, if you want to wrap up, I'm cool with that too.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm just going to say we're not powerless to stop it. I would just urge people to be leery of things like the gun control argument, because I've seen Tom Homan press that narrative with respect to illegal immigrants, and it's a false and misleading and frankly scandalous, accusatory, Marxist tactic. Tom Homan, the border czar, he's been relentlessly accusing, illegal immigrants of all these terrible deeds. And to be fair, a part of that is his job. Most of what he does on social media and stuff and for publicity stunts is not his job. His job is to secure the border. Properly stated. If I'm paying this guy my tax dollars, what I want him to do is secure our border, for crying out loud. And if there are bad criminals who need to be deported, go ahead and have a proper trial, a proper hearing with a jury, and you take care of it, right? You got to have due process. You got to have warrants. Anyways, just the issue there that I'm trying to call attention to is again, we're being played. We're being played so massively. It's this argument that, because this is the PR, this is the publicity stunt that was done to get all these, grotesque raids happening, is this notion that, and espionage, it's Patriot Act 2.0. And Tom Homan's admitted as much. He's had to invoke Patriot Act 2.0, in essence, to be able to locate and perform all this espionage and figure out where these people are and go abduct them, right? It's terribly misleading. The argument that if we just get rid of all these illegal immigrants, human trafficking will go away. Or even mostly go away. Or if we neurologically think, oh, illegal immigrants are child traffickers, they're rapists, they're drug smugglers. It's like, that's a very hurtful stereotype, to be totally honest with you. It's
Yeah, I
true that a
agree.
lot of them do that. There are also a lot of American citizens who are doing those same things. So if we
Yeah.
scapegoat, this is why Elder Bednar warned us about pride in his last general conference. This is one of the reasons, is we think we're so virtuous because we're going after those big baddies, and therefore we could possibly be big baddies ourselves, even
Yeah.
when we're openly abetting those things. We couldn't possibly be socialists or Marxists, but like most Republicans, by definition, candidly, today, by their fruits, are Marxists, socialists, and even communists, and it's terrifying.
Hmm.
That's why I'm speaking out about it. So, no, we're not powerless. Why I brought up the gun control argument. Sorry, I'm kind of a scatterbrained guy with my conversation. Sometimes you probably noticed.
That's
But
fun.
the notion of just ban all guns and therefore no one will ever die from murder or violence, that's a false argument. And it's a very similar argument that all illegal immigrants have to go. And you know, if there's even one case of somebody getting trafficked or hurt or raped or murdered or stabbed or whatever, that therefore we need to initiate class action against a certain group of people that we suspect of having done it. Similar rhetoric with like Islam. Oh, Muslims need to be deported, all of them, because it's like, guys, that's pretty extreme. That's not following due process. That's just Marxism, guys.
Yeah.
Anyways, so let's not fall for the same argument as the gun control crowd. But I've seen a lot of Republicans fall for that just because they have this rhetoric, they get it ingrained, and they're not thinking anymore.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. The immigration's it's a messy topic, right? But I think that the bottom line is we need a secure border, you know? We need a secure border. We need to control who's coming in and out of the country. And then, but when it comes to actually deporting, that's a whole different issue.
It needs to be handled sensitively, and the church's stance on it is correct, frankly. And I just don't have the greatest patience or respect for attempts to do otherwise. And the church even warned. This is one of the things covered in our last human rights panel, which was specifically centered on illegal immigration. Is the church warned that, you know, even a nice sounding and just sounding policy enforced can be enforced carelessly. It can be enforced in a way that causes harm, and we need to be really careful about that. And lo and behold, I don't believe we would be seeing the riots in LA and other places if we were actually handling this matter more discreetly, more tactfully, less mob-like. But you look at X, you look at Donald Trump's press, and everything that's covering this administration is inflammatory. It's outrageous. It incites mob action, mob think, even violence, and classism, frankly. And so I'm like, what are the fruits? People keep on saying, oh, you can't possibly be serious that Donald Trump is a Marxist or a socialist or a globalist. I'm like, by their fruits you shall know them. It's just that we're already accustomed to the idea that this guy can do no wrong because of the interplay between the left and right wing media. Hysterical accusation. Oh, that's been debunked. It's like the boy who cried wolf, you know? So that's the reason for that charade. And so every time, Russiagate, I guarantee, we already know, actually, that reason why Russiagate is there is because Trump does have Russian connections. He is a pawn of the Russian regime. And therefore having this debunked conspiracy theory about Trump's Russia collusion, like, they can saturate the propaganda airwaves with all that nonsense and make it very difficult for people to find out what's true because they only listen to their favorite partisan fear porn factory,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't listen to anything else, and they don't think for themselves.
Fair enough. Yeah, and that's a problem that I see that I'm not always the best at it, but I try to be objective where I can. And I think that lots of times what happens is people say, "Oh, I'm a Republican, therefore I believe this, everything that my party says. I'm a Democrat, therefore I believe everything my party says. Instead of trying to take a thoughtful, issue by issue, comparison where you hear both sides and examine the cause and effect and the relationship to the Constitution and all the facts, right? But so many people are like, oh, you know, my favorite my favorite commentator says this. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just outsourcing, and Satan loves it when we outsource, right?
Right. That's what you're thinking. Yep.
Because it makes us, it's the same thing as binding, only he doesn't even have to proactively bind us necessarily if we bind ourselves voluntarily. Like if we just say, okay, yeah, I'll just think whatever that guy thinks. I'll think whatever Miley Cyrus tells me to think. I'll think whatever Taylor Swift tells me to think. I'll think whatever Donald Trump tells me to think.
Right.
And this is one of the reasons why you weren't here for it, but I began this episode, this panel discussion, talking about how the party system is a pyramid scheme that imposes Stockholm syndrome. It forces Stockholm syndrome onto the people who are trapped in it. Because it steals their representative power through special access to the ballot and special government benefits that people don't have access to, except through the parties. See, because we both know that there's no viable third party candidate. You can't write in President Nelson and have him win the election.
Yeah, everyone does it. Yeah.
Right? Even though that's the most logical and obvious and best choice, right? So people would disagree with me about that, but like in terms of wisdom, in terms of integrity, like yeah, he checks all the boxes. And so that's what clearly should win in a rational election. But we have an irrational election system because of the two-party system.
Why would you expect things to be rational, Seth?
Because we're children of God. And anything less than that is unacceptable and disappointing, and for very good reason. And it's for that reason.
I know, I'm just teasing.
We're not mere animals. And so, like, I get disappointed very easily in human beings, including myself. I have high expectations. But we should, because that's a testimony every single day whose we are and who we are. We're children of God. And anything less than that is unacceptable. These people in government behaving like animals, it's unacceptable. We shouldn't stand for it. We shouldn't be okay with that. I excused and condoned Donald Trump's behaviors, not all of them. I used to have, even when I was more of a staunch partisan, I guess, I still had boundaries there. I'm like, I'm not condoning his unchastity, and I was super clear about that. But still, it was so offensive and derogatory and mind-numbing for people just to constantly insult you, saying, oh, you voted for Trump. You must like adultery. And I'm like, no. They're both terrible choices. Like,
you're right.
I wanted to run a billboard ad this last election and just be like, I don't know, like the Mormon ad in the old days of the ice cream cone with like the cockroach in it.
Yep.
And just be like, all right, you can have the one with the cockroach, or you can have the one with the doo-doo on top of it. Which one do you want?
For real.
It's like, and just
real.
pull the Princess Bride line. Like, they're both poisoned. They literally are both poisoned. And the devil's trying to get us forced Stockholm system, which, by the way, does once you recognize that pattern, that's it's a much stronger argument for the fulfillment of the Book of Revelation, shall we say, in all of its horrors. You begin to see how that's possible because of the party system and because they're both poisoned.
Yeah.
Because like 10 years ago, my dad had this thing where he's just like, I figured it out. Democrats are the bad guys.
Right.
And he's a really smart guy. He's a really smart guy. And I was like, I agree with you. They're totally bad guys. And I saw Dinesh D'Souza's films, which were really well done. I thought did a really good job of portraying this. And I was like, wow, they're such bad guys. And then I'm like, listening to the prophets more over time. And still, like, it's just been within the past few years that I've just been like, I've been really leery of the skunkiness in the party system for a long time. But it was just the last few years when I was just like, whoa, guys, wait a minute. Like, they are totally both on the same team. They're both part of the same secret combination. And everything they're doing to us is on purpose. It's to manipulate us, control us, make us think we have a choice when he's stealing it from us. So we have to work outside the party system. We have to, for our own survival. And I was hoping this year, like, the party system would just, like, die really obviously. And then in hindsight, I was like, oh, of course they wouldn't let that happen. Of course not.
Yeah.
Because that's their gig. That's how those are their puppet strings. They're not going to cut them.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that are broken that are probably not, I'm not trying to sound pessimistic, but just being realistic, probably not going to change. For example, the precedent with um, the precedent of uh, presidents to basically just EO everything, executive
Yeah,
orders.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I have no expectation that the Gadiantans in government will give up an ounce of power until there are blinding flashes of light overhead over every major American city at midnight. Because we're being bombed to oblivion through treason.
Hmm.
That's my expectation, is that we're never going to have full opportunity to restore the constitutional republic until after that happens. Because we've been backstabbed by the people that frankly, these current secret combinations are conspiring with.
Yeah.
My dad's
Well,
known this for years. He used to work at the DoD. He saw a lot of this treason and backstabbing happen. I've been wanting to make it into a documentary for years. Almost nobody's believed me. But it's all real. It's all real. Hope you sleep well tonight. Thanks.
all right. Thanks for the conversation. Appreciate you. And yeah, get some good rest too. Sorry, were you wrapping up or you were just saying that rhetorically?
Both. I mean, I don't know. You're welcome to riff off of that or say anything else you want to. I
Okay.
don't know how much you're still game for here.
No, you're all good. Yeah, I should probably head to bed here soon too. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I guess the bottom line would be where's the silver lining in all this? Is there anything hopeful?
Yeah, there totally is. I'll tell you what it is. Okay, so the Joseph Smith did indeed prophesy that the Constitution would be saved by the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He said that. That's not just the White Horse prophecy. That's something that came after the fact. It may contain some embellishments and stuff, and the church has purportedly disavowed that and so on. That doesn't invalidate the prophecy Joseph Smith actually made, which is that the Constitution will hang by a thread. We're seeing that unfold right before our eyes, and it will be the law-abiding, good citizens, members of the church, together with some others, I believe and hope, who will go and save the Constitution from oblivion. And the reason why the Constitution is necessary is because we have a work to do to build Zion before the Savior comes again. This current administration, the partisan system we are under, is not going to restore the Constitution. They never will. As Ezra Taft Benson prophesied, the Constitution will not be saved in Washington. And this is one reason why I have not been able to, in good conscience, align ever with any movement that purports that could be true, because I know it is not true. That's the, if you will, the fatal flaw, defect exposed in the Q movement and in Trump. And apart from the fact that it's overt globalism and socialism and so on, there are a lot of socialistic promises in the Q lore as well, which Trump is. It's disgusting when you see all the socialism and you just see like, oh yeah, make it all out of gold, and I'm just like, guys, we're seeing idol worship right now, and idol worship is really, really, really disgusting. But that's what it is. And you look at the prophecy of Daniel, he exercised great faith and he saw in vision the kingdoms of the last days. Nebuchadnezzar saw in vision the kingdoms of the last days from his own until the latest. And if you look at I go over some of this in a video that I did on the apocryphal writings of Ezra, and because there's the prophecy of the eagle in there, and there's been a following out around a particular theory. I don't know if you followed that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So they call it Ezra's eagle. Anyway, So that's in
Oh,
the
Ezra's
Apocrypha.
Eagle. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I did a video on that, and I don't subscribe to, and I never did subscribe to this guy's particular timeline of things. Didn't seem right to me because so many of these timelines are obsessed about when's the Savior going to come again? When is he going to come in? I mean, they don't say. The prophets don't say. They say these things need to happen first, but they don't say when the Savior's going to come again. So trying to set a deadline or a specific strict timeline of when he's going to come again just doesn't make any sense to me. It does make sense to me to say these things need to come first. Building Zion needs to come first. And despite all the calamities and catastrophes that happen around us, that's our preeminent duty, is to gather out the righteous, to build Zion, to save the Constitution. If we need the Constitution to build Zion, that's why we need to save it.
Hmm.
I brought up the prophecy of Daniel and of Ezra for the following reason, that Daniel saw that Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold and all these different kingdoms, and then in the last days, like the feet of this idol were made out of iron mixed with miry clay, which represents a remnant of the Roman Empire
Hmm.
has persisted to the present day. Those are the legs of iron, was the Roman Empire, and the feet still consisting of some of that iron means some of the Roman Empire is still around, and it's mingled with the miry clay, which represents the pagan chieftains. And you look at what is the power structure in medieval Europe? What are the institutions and the kingdoms and the empires that have persisted down to this day? Those are the kingdoms of this world.
Hmm.
And in the vision, Daniel saw that they would be destroyed, be smashed to powder, and be replaced by the kingdom of God on the earth. Which, if you go to Revelation chapter 12, according to John, and according to Joseph Smith, the Joseph Smith translation, the kingdom of God, there's a vision of a woman who is trying to escape from a dragon, seven-headed dragon that's coming after her, trying to devour her child.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord miraculously saves the woman, and she gives birth to this child in the wilderness. And the woman, Joseph Smith gives the interpretation, the woman is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Hmm.
The child is the political kingdom of God on the earth.
Hmm.
So you put all these prophecies together, and with the Ezra's vision of the eagle, there's this three-headed eagle. Where do you find that heraldry, by the way?
Where do you find what?
The heraldry, the image, the mascot of an eagle, or specifically a three-headed eagle.
Was it in Ezra? Okay.
That's where the image of a three-headed eagle occurs, representing
Oh, you're
Latter-day
saying
Kingdom.
like the American flag, like, or like American eagle? Like, I don't know.
I
What are they
mean,
creating?
I won't claim that it's irrelevant that America's mascot is an eagle. I won't claim that that's irrelevant at all.
Hmm.
I'm not claiming to have some special knowledge on that. But there are a number of kingdoms over time that have actually claimed descent and authority and modeled themselves after the Roman Empire. And yeah, they've been some of the most fascistic regimes ever to exist on the planet, and Elon Musk explicitly models everything he does after them. If you look at what he does, everything he does is pandering to the Roman Empire.
Hmm. Interesting.
Anyways, so I'm not a big fan of the Roman Empire. I'm just going to say that. I'm a big fan of the Kingdom of God. And that's the silver lining, is that the Kingdom of God will win, despite all of the shenanigans. And frankly, we need to play our part in that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's our duty.
Well, yeah, that's good. That's what we need. So let's make it happen, right?
That's right. It's not going to happen by itself. All things that are done, someone is the doer of them.
Exactly. Well, cool, man. Well, I will let you go. Great conversation.
Likewise. Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate you.
Yeah, you take care, man.
You too. Thanks.
Okay.